of the resolution. First off, so entertain a motion to adopt the resolution for updating the town flood maps, or FEMA flood maps.
So moved. One second.
And I'm going to read the resolution, and at the end of it, if anyone has any comments or questions, I'll entertain them, and then we'll move on to the regular meeting. Pursuant to RSA 674-57, by resolution of the Jackson Board of Selectmen, all lands designated as special flood hazard areas by the Federal Emergency Management Agency in its flood insurance study for the County of Carroll, New Hampshire, dated March 19, 2013, together with the associated flood insurance rate maps dated March 19, 2013, are declared to be part of the Town of Jackson, New Hampshire zoning ordinance, Section 12, areas of special flood hazard, and are hereby incorporated by reference. John or Bob, did you have any questions?
No, that seems complete.
Clarity?
Straightforward to me.
Does anyone in the audience have any comments or questions regarding the flood maps?
How have they changed?
How have they changed? I believe the maps themselves are the same. They've been the same since, I think, 1976. The maps themselves haven't changed. What's changed, I believe, is the data incorporated in analyzing the maps and having to do with water flows and things like that. Most of the changes, I believe, have to do with quantifying the risks and being able to factor in how they analyze what risk Jackson has and that nature. This goes along with what was passed by the voters back in March, and it's just the logistics of updating the maps that go along with that. And once we pass the motion, it gets inserted into the zoning ordinance as the March 19th, 2013. So we don't need special vote of the. We don't need a town vote in order to update the maps. It's the authority of the Board of Selectmen to do so, and that's what we're facilitating this evening. Betsy?
I don't really understand why the date is in the future.
March meeting?
That's when they take effect. That's when they take effect. Okay. But the maps that will take effect then are already ones that we see, that you can see now.
The actual floodplains and things like that have not changed. So it's still the same flood areas. It's just updated maps. Anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. That stands. We're closing the public hearing and be calling to order our regular scheduled meeting. And first up is to amend and approve minutes. We still have the non-public session minutes from October 4th, and I think we can address those probably, I'm going to say, either under item 18 or, yeah, it'll really be under item 18. And that's probably where we'll also discuss unsealing the Lewis litigation non-public session minutes. So we'll probably do both of those things under item 18, if that's okay with the board.
That's fine.
Yeah.
So then we have before us the entertain a motion to approve the Selectmen's meeting minutes from November 15th, 2012.
So moved.
Seconding?
Any additions, amendments, clarifications? John? I have none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Diane, thanks for doing the work on the flood maps and getting that facilitated for us.
Let me sign that.
Oh, sorry, Bob.
No problem.
That brings us to public comment. Joyce?
We have, Edith and I have come to, on behalf of the trustees, to present the garden plan, if you will, for the library, drawn by Gary Spears with some other landscape architect that he uses as well. And I think as I told you when I brought this to you a while ago, I said we were going to do it, this is just a plan. These are Gary's suggestions. I don't want anybody to think that, we're doing this now or that it's set in stone, but Gary is a great, I think he's a really great landscaper, and I think he set a nice plan for us, and we know that we need your approval, or not, since the library's public land, town land.
By having an approval of this future plan that the library will be funding, it would allow us, we have people who want to donate money so that they could have a tree planted or something in the name of someone who's passed away, and we really don't feel comfortable taking their donation if we don't have somewhat of a plan to move forward with.
Right, and Gary has given me some specific, some specific trees that we can use there, and he's, this way when Mrs. So-and-so walks in with $1,000 that she wants as a memorial donation, we'd be happy to take it, but then we can say, okay, and this is what you can get for that money, and that's going to make somebody, I think, a lot more willing and happy to give the money.
I like the idea of the trees as opposed to the memorials, at least.
What, you don't want them on the bench?
No. Benches.
Well, what they probably do is have like those small bronze-looking placards that are in the ground, maybe 9 inches high, that just have some writing on them to signify the beneficiary.
Right, something that would be at the base of a tree, for example, unobtrusive.
And can I ask you a question? I've been working vaguely with Larry Bama to kind of come up with an alternative to benches in town. And we've had some discussions with Alice Pepper, Larry Bama. We wanted to get together and have a meeting and sit down, and now that I see this, our ideas have been trees or a memorial garden or something near the library with pavers. Would you guys entertain sitting, getting a meeting together with the East Side Walk Foundation, the Conservation Commission, and facilitate how to accept monies with this, because I don't even know, how to accept money. I know a 501c can, and that's why we approached the East Side Walk Foundation, which they are no longer. But maybe we could brainstorm and so that when someone came to the town, they'd come to the town office and they'd say, we'd like to donate, so-and-so passed away, et cetera. And there's an application they can fill out. And then there'd be a record, and so it would be...
Well, that seems like a fine idea to me. I think
we could maybe get together and, all work together on that.
why not?
I think that would be a great way to do it. I love the plans, and it would make life a lot easier for us if there was other groups that were planning this in that fashion. And Larry, the money issue that you bring up, Edith, there is something that I was going to raise with you in the library was the idea of, if you were interested anyway, putting on the ballot. It's an RSA that allows the library to accept donations and then expend the donations from your own funds without having to channel it through town funds or your 501c3. And I haven't figured out all the logistics of it yet, but I understand the logistics of the RSA and how the ballot question would go anyway, that would allow you to do that. And actually, I'm not even sure if it's a ballot question or a town meeting vote, but I was going to address that with you at some point because it would free up the logistics of how you would receive donations and then expend donations for this type of project or any type of project that people might be donating money to the library for. I meant to call you before tonight's meeting, but just haven't had a chance to yet.
Do you, as a Board of Selectmen, see where we're coming through with showing you this preliminary drawing, though? Like, we kind of want to have your blessing that something like this or something extremely similar is what we'd be planning down the road for this piece of property.
It's absolutely what I kind of had envisioned for the property as well. I would fully support it.
Yeah, it makes sense that, you'd want to come here and run that by us so that you didn't run into barriers down the road that you didn't foresee at the time. It's a fairly extensive-looking landscaping project. Do you have any idea what your cost estimate for doing something like that would be?
Well, Bob, it's gonna be done piecemeal. There's no way
Yeah.
it's ever gonna be done all at once. The what will be behind the library is
Right.
the very detailed part.
Right.
And, no, I really haven't. And Gary didn't put a number on it.
Uh-huh.
You know? Because, again, we know we need to either raise money
Yeah.
or, to do something very simple. But to put a tree or two trees, nice symmetry, that's a possibility.
Yeah.
That's not gonna be as difficult. So it's gonna be long-term.
Sure, but, like you
But
said,
isn't it great that we have a plan?
get started, get a tree in the ground and get some momentum. I mean, I fully support it as an individual. I'm not sure what our steps are as selectmen to go on record as a board for supporting that kind of project in order to give it the kind of life and credibility you're looking for. Jerry, John, is there any idea?
Well, if I understand correctly,
motion they're looking for?
At this point, you're just looking for kind of just a direction, an idea of whether we support the concept or not.
I think we need to approve
Okay.
as selectmen, because the library is town property.
Right,
I mean, we didn't feel we could just go start planting stuff without
right.
approval.
Well, I think that would pretty much be, the case where you'd be looking for, approval from us before actual plantings began. I think we're a little premature from giving approval for said plan. I think that, ideally you want to vet that through the Conservation Commission. They have, Larry, correct me if I'm wrong, but you oversee the Gray's Inn property on behalf of the town of Jackson. That's in your ballpark anyway. So I mean, to me,
We endorse this 100%, I can see that.
And I mean, Joyce, I think you're hearing from us. I believe the Conservation Commission. I think what this does is this puts the idea out there, and hopefully, if people watching tonight, if someone's against this sort of thing, they'll feel inclined to come and address it with us.
So would you feel comfortable with saying today that the selectmen endorse the plan that the library would like to have for the future landscaping of that property?
My only reservations at this point in time in doing that with this specific plan is the trees that I see on, I guess it would be the east side, this side of the library in the field area behind us. Long-term plans for the property, if we're going to be developing any sort of building out into there, and I don't know whether that's 20 years or 30 years or 40 years from now, but trees last hundreds of years. So, I would want to take a look at that anyway, just before I were to endorse a plan where there's tree plantings in that area. But I would say that, if those trees were the ones that were to be planted after we kind of had a master plan for the property, because we did have one before, but we didn't do what that master plan said. So I'd want to get a few more ducks in the row before I was comfortable endorsing this specific plan. But I am happy to say that, I love the plan. I think it's a smart thing to do for the property. And I would like to have some input from the Conservation Commission before we, approved and adopted a specific plan.
And to that point, Jerry, we had the plan that was done up, I think Phil Davies gave me that plan for prospective or future parking, for example, a parking lot, and we gave that to Gary. So, I mean, we were trying to address some of those future plans,
Right.
and he did take that into consideration on there. Just, that may not be totally what you're talking about.
Well, no,
it's part of it.
that is, and that does address it, but I think that this is a good preliminary viewing of it. We can kind of come up with a plan from here. I mean, I would like to get some information from the Conservation Commission, and also, I don't know where we want to be engineering the property yet, or even if we have the funds to do so, but those are something that I'd be considering anyway. Bob?
I'm wondering, is that the kind of thing that would be involved in your conversation as a conservation committee, you'd be discussing how those trees fit in with the master plan of the property? Is that fair to say you'd have that kind of dialogue?
I think the only issue is what Jerry said, is, maybe the further trees, but immediately around the library, what effect would that have, and what, I think the only input we'd want on something like that is, can we help? Can we solve the memorial bench problem at the same time as well? Which, ties right into it. It's a great idea. That's exactly where we were headed.
Well, I'm asking that question because then as a Board of Selectmen, if that comes to us, having had the endorsement of the Conservation Committee and as well as a report that says these were things that were discussed and this fits in with the master plan and maybe there were some things Gary didn't see or maybe it all does fit in, and so just to know that it's been vetted
It
through
sounds like
that.
we need a joint meeting.
Well, when's your next meeting? Isn't it, don't you have one
It's
coming up
Monday.
before Christmas?
Well, there's one on Monday. That's a little soon for you guys, 5:30 PM. We'd be glad to address it, but it might be soon. You're obviously not going to plant anything in the next month or two.
Right.
So we do have time. We could plan for January or February or a joint meeting.
Well, I see the value of you guys being able to go out and start some fundraising
Right.
with a plan that has received an endorsement from the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah, that's something I was kind of losing in that picture, so that's something I think that we can consider in that. And,
So if that goes through the Conservation Committee at a meeting and then comes back to us and we're comfortable that all the right questions have been asked at that meeting and the two groups have gotten together and agreed that this fits in nicely with what currently exists for a master plan, then that makes it much easier for me to say, there does need to be some sort of a formal thing here so that their fundraising efforts can go forward with our backing. That's why you're here. You want to make sure that you don't raise all this money and lead these people on, and then all of a sudden everybody say, well, I don't know about that patio.
and it seems to me as though that's a fairly dedicated area there, and it's pretty well spelled out where it may be that we can, make a motion to grant authority to the library committee to plant and develop that area as presented on the plans and give you
Right.
some authority to change those as they go along too. And that might be the type of thing that we can have ready for us to approve. That would probably be the type of thing we'd be looking at, is to, not necessarily an easement, but an easement type of agreement that we would make a motion to approve. Would be how I would envision that happening, but we'll do a little bit of research on that on our end. And I think in the meantime, if you guys can get together with that, it would go a long ways towards that.
Is there still time to put that on the agenda for Monday?
We could, if you can.
One of you can show?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, it's kind of short notice for them, but fine with
You're
me.
not here. I think I can do it.
I would love to see Jay Henry just take a look at it, just for plowing and the path, I think he's gonna be good at keeping your walkway open, so just have him glance at it and see if he has a
Now,
problem.
he could do that between now and your meeting and just,
Again, we believe me, we thought about Jay, and we really did try to address
Yeah.
concerns.
And that's the
Somebody will come up with something we didn't, I'm sure.
yeah.
That's the benefit of having Gary do the plans, is that Gary, I'm sure, took that into consideration when he developed the plans as well. And I really would like to thank you and the library committee for taking this on. I think it's a wonderful thing to do. And I would really like to thank Gary Spears for the work that he continues to do for the town in the way that he does it. I think he deserves a lot of credit for that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Edith?
Public comment as a library treasurer. I just want to let you know we're almost wrapped up with our 2013 budget, and we do not feel that we're going to be asking the taxpayers for any funding in addition to what we received in 2012. Just so you see that as you're working on your budgeting, and I'll be in touch with Diane.
Excellent.
Thanks for the heads up.
Thank you.
Anything else at this point?
No, I
Great.
have something. I'd like to respond, if I could, to the discussion you had with the moderator at the last session.
Sure.
First, this is the letter that you've probably seen before, I hope, that's sent to Kelly.
the letter from the Attorney General.
Attorney General, yes. And, you know, I think at the last, my understanding, the last session, we decided to close the matter. And I think there's some issues here that deserve further inspection. But first, I'd like to make a few clarifications. First, I've never stated it, but there's been talk that this has something to do with my candidacy for selectman. That's not the case. The complaint was all about several of us trying to do electioneering about the zoning ordinance amendment that took place at the last meeting.
I'm not sure, Frank, if that was specifically stated that way at our meeting, but if it was, thanks for the clarification anyway.
So this is all about the zoning amendment. You know, at both last meeting and the last time he was here, Willis indicated that he did not prevent us from electioneering on private property. And one might infer from that that I filed a false complaint, an awful complaint to the Attorney General, and I reject that entirely. I think the record, the factual record that day, and witnesses would indicate otherwise. All I can say is that I had the luxury of filing the complaint basically the same, just the next day after the elections, and Willis had to respond to the Attorney General some 6 or 7 months later, so things might be recollected differently. I think the important thing is
On that issue, Frank, which was made clear in this letter, was that the Attorney General wasn't making any kind of decision on who was right or wrong in that specific reference anyway.
Yeah, in fact, you know, Willis, at least according to the letter, Willis indicates that he did not do that, or he doesn't intend to assert that he has any ability to prevent electioneering on private property. So he's agreed to that, so it's not an issue, it's moot, but again, I certainly believe that I was prevented, and I think the record shows that. I think the
Well,
important...
I'm sorry, say that again?
I do believe that I filed a truthful complaint, and I think the factual record supports that. I mean, there was a...
The only thing we have factual on record is the letter from the Attorney General, and who investigated it and stated in the letter that he had no opinion as to who was truthful in that incident.
Right.
That's what we have on the record, Frank. So I mean,
Well, there was an oral complaint that day that the Attorney General called us back and said that he had no right to prevent us. So if we weren't being prevented, I'm not sure why we would have filed the oral complaint on that day as well. But again, it's moved.
well, but that wasn't part of the of any official ruling from the Attorney General. That was a Deputy Attorney General that you had spoken with that day. So. You know, again, it's what we have on as far as the factual record is concerned. We have no ruling from the Attorney General one way or the other on the veracity of either party's statements there, and they really are kind of moot. So
I agree. I think the important thing, though, is in the last paragraph on the second page. Actually, I have some copies of this section. You know, he makes clear that it would have been difficult, quote, it would have been, quote, difficult for electioneers to have been able to come in contact with voters at the Whitney Center, polling at unquote. And earlier in the letter, he indicates that's a constitutional requirement. And then going on, you know, he suggests that Willis speak to both you and the town council about resolving that, because that's how I read the last paragraph and the last paragraph, where they end up concluding that I trust the town of Jackson will adjust the enforcement of the no electioneering zone accordingly. And I prefer that to comply with the U.S. Constitution.
So I'll step in to respond and just say that I think that if we're going to delve into this matter, that it needs to be a separate standalone agenda item and not take place during citizens' comments. I think that if this rises to that level of importance with you, that it may also rise to that level of importance with others, and it should rise to that level of importance with the Board of Selectmen. And so public comments are really set up for us to take information in rather than have an exchange. And I know Diane spends a lot of time and puts a lot of hard work into putting together our agenda, and so that we don't end up getting backloaded with issues that we're not able to spend the quality time with, rather than get hung up on new and separate and major issues during public comments. I'd like to see this on our next meeting's agenda as a standalone item, because I've got things to say, John may have things to say, Bill may like to be here and be part of this discussion too. Maybe there's clarification that needs to happen with the letter. You know, lots of different ways to interpret some of this stuff, and I just would like to see this thing move to another meeting and be a separate standalone item.
I think I would agree. Frank, how do you?
Thank you. I was going to conclude my comment by simply suggesting that rather than closing the matter, as you decided at the last meeting, that it might be helpful to at least have the town attorney review the letter and identify what issues there may be.
Well, at the end, we vetted that out pretty well at our meeting, and I'm comfortable with the decision we made regarding that specifically, but again, I think if we put it on the agenda for the next meeting and discuss that more thoroughly, I'm certainly open to the idea. Frank, thanks for coming and stating that. Any other comments at this time? Bob?
I hope you're gonna do something about that, you know, I see you got it on the agenda, but that's been going on for 3 or 4 years, and that window only runs about 25 feet, go right in the catch basin, across the parking lot, and down the brook and into Whitney's Pond where kids play all the time.
Bob, it is on the agenda. We'll be discussing that under item number 8.
When it gets to Whitney's Bridge, that's wild and scenic.
Understood, Bob. Again, we will be addressing that. I'd be happy to take comments from you regarding that at that point in time in the agenda, rather than getting into it at this point in time. It is on our agenda. We do plan on addressing it this evening. If you could be patient and wait until we're in that part of the agenda, as we'll address it at that point in time.
Are you going to be able to stick around long enough to get to item number 7 on the agenda, or?
I don't know how long it was rented.
I don't know how many more public comments we got.
I honestly don't mind moving that item number up. If that's why the primary reason why you might be here. What I'd like to do is maybe get through public comments, if there's any others, go through the proclamations for the Christmas can cure, and then I would entertain moving item number 8 up to number 5, if we will.
If that's okay with the chief.
That's fine.
All right.
Okay. If that'll work for everyone, I think we'll plan on doing that. Are there any other public comments at this time? Hearing none, let's move on to the proclamations for Christmas can cure.
Sorry, Andy, but you got jumped too.
That's all right. I'm used to it.
We have before us the official proclamations, and I think maybe the proper thing to do here would be to entertain a motion to name as an honorary citizen the Lawrence Adams family.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I'd entertain a motion to accept as honorary citizens the Joshua Kennedy family.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I would entertain a motion to accept as honorary citizens of the town of Jackson the Christopher Strickland family.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Aye. And we do have the official proclamations here with the seals that we'll be signing at this point in time. Is there anything you'd like to add at this point in time?
I'm very pleased every year when we do this that you find it approval for these wonderful people. this year we have some very unusual families who will bring a very different perspective to their problems in their families and so forth. And this is the first year that I was not going to have all of my children here because of the way the holiday falls. It falls at a place where the kids are still in school. So I came up and asked the community for help. And I ended up with 96 volunteers.
Wow. Wow.
So I'm
That's
very
fantastic.
blessed at being able to do.
Wow.
I just put it together and everybody just picked up the ball and ran with it. So it's a cause that I think everybody feels very sensitive to.
And the ceremonies are taking place next Friday,
hope that
10 a.m.
one of you or all of you can be there. It will be on next Friday morning at 10 a.m.
And at that point in time, one of the selectmen will be, again, reading the proclamations
Yes,
adopting the
to
honorary
each.
citizens. And,
But you must know that in case of Joshua Kennedy, he passed away, and so I will only have his wife and his 3 children, unfortunately. But she agreed to come, and she really needed that impetus so that we could maybe make her Christmas a little better than it would be without her husband.
well, I really think it's an honor for the town to accept these folks as citizens, honorary citizens, and I think it's wonderful work that you do to facilitate that and accommodate these families.
Thank you.
Do you want to take
Yes.
these with you?
I want to frame them up so that this year,
Thanks very much for doing that.
I'll give them to you in the morning, and I will have the entire Kenneth High School band here.
Yeah.
So, and also, interestingly enough, the 6th grade at the Jackson Elementary School, they called me a month or so ago and asked if they could participate, so they'll all be here too.
Wonderful.
Because apparently they selected the Wounded Warrior Project as one of their projects for the entire year to find out more about them.
Oh, really?
And so I'm going to also let them bake for them and provide food for them and stuff, so it'll be, try to bring families together and people to understand what these people are all about.
If I remember, aren't some of those kids in the 11, 12-year-old range
Yes.
coming? So that's,
Yes, this is
That'll
a
be-
big spread this year. I've got from 4 to 15.
right, right.
So I have to deal with it quite
Yeah.
differently. So a lot of the community kids, high school kids, have volunteered to help me down at Cranmore with the tubing and stuff because I didn't have my kids to
Yeah.
be with them.
Right.
So it's really a community effort this year.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge family effort for your whole family, and I know that it's, my first year, my first term as selectman, but this isn't a small thing.
No, no,
It's a big thing, it's a huge thing, it's a huge undertaking for you and your family, and I would just like to thank you on behalf of the town for doing this, and if it wasn't for people like you calling attention to the plight of these wounded warriors and raising awareness about them, we wouldn't have the understanding that we do, and I just appreciate you doing that.
Thanks. What I want is the children to know.
Yeah.
That's my goal. And I think it's working. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
And
See you on Friday.
I would invite as many members from the community that would like to attend. Last year, it was a lot of fun. It was raining and 33 degrees, I believe, and it was still a lot of
It
fun.
might be
So,
that way again. But interestingly enough, I got a call from Eric over at the general manager of Storyland, and he's given permission to all of his employees to be here. And
wow.
also, he's done something I can't believe he's done. He's already sent it to me. It's already being done. He's going to put all the signs, he's already had permission, he's putting all the signage over the Storyland signs. And it says, "Welcome to Jackson, the Wounded Warriors,"
Oh, wow.
and all their names.
Oh, man.
Yeah, and he's got it on
That's
both
great.
sides, and they made the signs up for me, so I didn't have to come up with the money to do it. So
That's excellent.
people are really
Thank you,
sensitive.
Storyland, too. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks,
you.
Doctor.
Where is this, what time?
It is here at 10 o'clock on Friday the 14th.
14.
Chief?
They're gonna move up.
Manure.
They're gonna move up.
Oh, I'm
Manure.
sorry. We're going to put a manure pile in front of you.
Manure pile up ahead of you.
John, you had indicated that you'd like to see this on the agenda, so I would put it here tonight. Is there anything you'd like to start off with, or you want to take the comment from Bob at this point? Or?
Yeah, I said I received a comment from town person about the manure piles. I thought it would be appropriate to put it on the agenda and address it. It's been kind of a
It has been an
issue for a
ongoing
while,
issue, so-
yeah. And I think we need to kind of settle it one way or the other, or at least try to anyways.
John, would you like to come up? Are you happy in the back, or?
No, I'm fine. I
Okay.
mean, I'm really kind of flabbergasted by all this. This is all generated because the Davises have sued us about a litany of things. They're not happy with the outcome of the litigation, so they'll do everything and anything they can to make my life difficult. We store manure there just as Bob stores manure at his property, just as the Deals store manure at their property, just as Sue Chase does on hers, just as the Petersons do on theirs. I'm at a loss. It's gone now, but we move it constantly, and we give it away to local farmers, and they use it in their fields. So I don't know what else to tell you except that, it's a natural occurring event. Now, we do have horses. Unless we get rid of the horses, which is what they would like to see us do, it won't stop. We'll try to keep better control of it, and we have been, but we had it all moved and piled the other day to have it removed with a larger loader, and that was done a couple of days later.
I saw that. Is there any way you can find a place that's not quite so close to the river? I mean, that's probably the big issue, is that it's so close to the
Sue
watershed.
Chase's is dumping on the river. His house is right on the river. I don't know what else to tell you. I'll take a look, but I don't have that much land right there.
This came up once before that was brought to my attention, and I had a discussion with the road agent about it. It didn't rise to the level of discussion at the meeting, and he had mentioned that the pile had recently been removed. And so it sounds like periodically it was just, educate me, it builds up and then you get rid of it. It builds up and you get rid of it.
This is a naturally occurring byproduct of having.
Right. How often are you,
We usually move it a couple, 3 times a year,
3 times a year?
but I mean, it's just, we always give it away to anybody that wants it.
Yeah,
People
yeah.
say they're gonna come and get it, and then they don't come right away.
Uh-huh.
So, it's sort of whenever they will come and take it.
We're not doing it intentionally, it's just, like I said, it's just part of the business of
Yeah.
farming. And,
Yeah,
and I know there's some unhappy feelings from that other side of the road, and that's what's generating this.
yeah.
Because those horses have been there now for over 10 years, and since they didn't do so well in the litigation, now all of a sudden it's an issue.
Well, I think I want to stick to just the manure pile, but I appreciate you're more than welcome
Just the
to
background.
enter
We
into.
keep- we
Sure.
Keep a handle
Okay.
on it, we try to keep it down, and it's just, they just keep putting it up.
Is removing that pile 3 times a year, do you acknowledge that's going on? Does it need to happen more often in your view? Does it need to be in a different place? I mean, how can we, I don't know that we're here to broker anything, but what else would you guys like to bring into the conversation?
Moving it 3 times a year, doesn't happen much because it's still running right in. I asked the fire department what happened. They had a tree down there and they had stopped the traffic. Irene and one of the firemen thought they had an oil leak because the much of that black crap running across and into the catch basin. He thought it was an oil leak. That gives you some idea what the good stuff is going down the river.
Again, I don't know what to tell you
Yeah.
guys, but we can feud all night. There's a word I never thought I'd use in my lifetime. Is that when they fertilize their fields with their manure, it's all over the roads for days. And that runs into the river too, so I'm at a loss.
Yeah.
I'll do the best I can to keep it lower and move it more often, but I can't see why I'm even here.
So by doing the best you can, would that mean, say, so what if the goal was quarterly removal rather than once every 3 months? So it's 4 times a year?
Every day if I could.
Right, if you could, but,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
okay.
I'll look at it some more, but this needs to stop.
People are coming by and taking it,
Yes,
and is that,
that's perfectly okay with me, and Carl has standing orders to let it happen.
horse manure is, has it got value?
Come on.
Not to us.
Not to you, because there's lots of seeds in there, gross.
They'd like to put it in their gardens, and
Right.
this last load went up the hill this summer, who had built a house, and
Yeah.
he wanted to spread it in with his new topsoil
Yeah,
to enrich it.
uh-huh.
How about periodically putting it into the Jacksoninas that it's there for the taking?
There you go.
Absolutely. But we'll, like I said, we'll do the best we can with it, but I'm at a loss to decide how to deal with something when someone else is doing the exact same thing up the street.
Well, I think that our big focus, well, how can
I know, I
we
understand.
strike a good faith understanding here?
Absolutely.
That's-
As a business, it's our obligation to remove it.
Sure.
We'll continue to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry for the difficulty and the trouble of having to do this tonight.
Oh, that's all right, that's why we get paid the big bucks. So, is there anything else we can weigh in with here? I mean, yeah, Bob?
He's referring to my pile, the exact same thing, my pile's up in the middle of the field, it's gotta run through a lot of sod land before it ever gets to the brook. And another one is up the road, and she has a silk fence around it. And I haul that manure 2 or 3 times in the summer, there's only horses there in the summer. And I only get 2 horses versus down the road they get 10 or a dozen.
Yeah.
So that doesn't get much outside of that silk fence.
If somebody went up there and had a look at that pile and maybe had some ideas or low-cost suggestions for managing that pile, would you be open to, I don't know who it would be?
No, I have no problem with that, but then you have to be careful of the selectivity of it.
Sure,
Okay?
Absolutely.
I'm happy to do something, but there are 4 other farms right around me, they're all doing the
Right.
same thing, and that's not accurate either.
yeah, and that's why, yeah, and I don't want,
I don't
but,
want to be there either, I just don't
Right.
know, so if someone has a better idea, I'm not the smartest person here,
Yeah.
happy to look at it.
believe me, I'm relieved we're only here talking about one pile tonight, that's for sure. So, okay, well, maybe we could do that, maybe talk to Jay if somebody's got some ideas to go up there or whatever, and he's gonna make a good faith effort to remove it a little bit more often, and,
I'm satisfied. Betsy?
yeah, that's it.
I should think that a silt fence would be an automatic thing that people would have to place around. Is that not something that would be expected?
I don't know anything about it, to be honest with
Yeah.
you. I don't know anything about it myself.
Is that possible, Vic? Is that something you could put there?
As soon as everybody else in the street does it, man.
Well, that's why I said maybe we could get somebody to go up there and make some suggestions, because I really don't know much at all about a silt fence either, and maybe there are people that know more about those things that either go up and say, well, that would be useless, or maybe that would be a good idea and take you 20 minutes. I don't even know, but if we have somebody go up and maybe
I'll
look
talk
at
to
things.
Jay
And
about it.
all right, I appreciate that.
No problem.
Okay.
Andy, have you had any experience with that stuff?
Manure? I had all kinds of experience. Usually I'm trying to dig out from underneath it. There's no other location for that. It couldn't go back across the street so that it's not so close to the river. Because I have seen several, I've been up there a few times looking at other things, and when it rains, the way that the town road is graded, it tends to pitch all that water into John's parking lot, which just happens to be where the manure pile is at the end of. And, in heavy rains, it does flow right through that pile. And then of course it runs downstream into the river where, the kids are swimming. And I know there's several houses that have, they're drafting water out of that brook as well. So, I mean, that would be my cause for concern, if there were any other place to put
The
it.
problem I'm having, I have no problem with what you're saying, but I'm having a problem with the farms around the corner from me that actually, one place actually dumps the manure in the river. and it's still being done today. So I have a real difficulty being singled out because one of my neighbors is unhappy with it.
Well, and that's a really good point too. I mean, if there's somebody that's going to go up there and assess the situation,
Look at everybody.
it would be fair and reasonable to
Yes, sir.
identify if there are 3 or 4 other folks that have manure piles up that way, and because it's nice prime farmland and horse riding going on up there, maybe there's a way we can do an overall thing, because there may be suggestions for the other 2, 3.
Sure. I mean, yeah, yours
groups
just
as
happens
well.
to be the most
Visible.
visible.
That's the
one.
Right.
No, absolutely, and I don't want it there either, but I don't
Right.
have enough land to, right there.
Right.
So I'm open to suggestions, but like I said, we'll make a good faith effort to keep a better handle on it. But we're also at the whim of other people coming and moving it and taking it.
And we understand, and we respect the fact you're a landowner and you've got rights, and nobody's up here trying
But I don't
to.
want it to look like hell either.
Right, right.
So
All right,
I'll do that, and I'll catch up to Jay in the next few days.
that'd be great. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thanks, John.
Appreciate it.
I think that's enough on that subject for the evening. Carl, I think we're ready for you now.
I'm wondering if we do.
Hard act to follow.
I'd like to follow up with this. I'd like to follow up at a meeting.
I've talked with Jay about it. I'm
Yeah,
sure
and I
he will be
have
having
too.
a hard time doing this. I'll talk to Jay and inform him of that, just to invite him to take a look at it anyway.
And I think it'd be great for us to get a report back here at a board meeting on that, just so we followed through.
Yeah.
So thanks for.
Okay.
How are you?
Okay. Biannually, we have a sex offender that resides in town, and we have to get together, meet with him, and register him every 6 months. So that was done. We took a report of a lost wallet. We got a call to check on the welfare of an older person in town, and we went around and speaking with him. He said he hadn't eaten in 3 days and he's sick with the flu. So we got him some food and some drink and, on a couple of occasions, and just kind of, monitor. We took a report of a complaint at a motel between guests and staff. We did a VIN verification for a resident on a vehicle. Checked on a welfare of another gentleman in town. A friend was having difficulty getting through. He as well had the flu. A while back there was a couple that was going through a divorce, and we had taken some guns into possession for safekeeping, and since that matter's fairly settled, they were returned. We had a landlord-tenant dispute that's been going on. It was mostly civil, but the tenant has moved out, so that problem has been resolved. We go there and do some standbys while individuals removing stuff out, so there would be no confrontation. We had 4 false burglar alarms. We assisted the fire company with the fire alarm that went off at a restaurant, some dirty rags that caught fire. Cross-country ski messed check into a car that was on the trail, and we had known about that, so we contacted the owner and asked him to get his car removed. We had a gentleman in town who received, you would call it a hate letter, I guess, full of obscenities and whatnot. We had a case down at district court. A gentleman was charged with negligent driving. He pled guilty. We assisted the ambulance with an old lady that fell and hurt her neck and back. There was a gentleman driving through town, 16, was going rather fast. He was stopped and found out that his license was suspended, his registration was suspended. I took a call for some electrical wires down on Juniper Way. Had a motor vehicle accident up in the between the village and the Notch due to the day it snowed. Assisted the ambulance with the gentleman that was seizing, and took a complaint for a person whose house had been used without his knowledge and stuff. So, okay.
Kind of busy. It's been 3 weeks. It's been 3 weeks.
3 weeks, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks,
sir.
Chief.
Hello, Andy.
Hey, you guys.
It's on to building permit matters. I've got this pile all messed up now, which probably isn't a big deal, because I think I want to go through the easy ones first anyway. Which I guess sitting on top here is the permit for application for David and Jean Mason. And I see where you're recommending that no permit is necessary for this, and just wanted the other Board of Selectmen to review this anyway, because I'm not quite sure entirely agree with that, given the value of the project at $42,000.
In truly, the state building code says that this work would require a permit. However, on windows and siding and roofing, the past board and this board has not been issuing permits for that unless we're making changes to the structure. So,
My understanding is we've been asking for and issuing permits for any work that's over $10,000, but I'm wrong on that.
you've been requiring an application be filled out,
Right.
but we haven't been issuing permits for anything that requires the siding, windows, and roofing. I think that it's a grand idea that we follow the state building code and issue building permits for everything. It makes it easy. But that isn't how we've been handling these things in the past.
Doesn't that statement contradict our zoning ordinance?
That's kind of what my concern is too. I mean, I know that we've been doing it for roofing and for siding.
Roofing, siding,
and I wasn't aware that we were doing it for windows as well. I mean, if it's inside the footprint and it's below 10,000, I know that we wouldn't require. And I guess the only thing that sticks out with me is the value of this project being so high. I don't recall a window replacement project where anything went over $10,000, and I could be wrong on that, but.
We've had a couple of them at the condos, at the Wentworths, and the abutting property to that on the, just below Shenandoah.
This year?
A couple of years ago.
Well, I'm talking about this year, because things
Okay.
changed in March when the voters voted to, to enforce the state building code pursuant to section 16. And to me, the state building code requires it. If our section 16 seems to me to indicate that one's required there. I understand that work's already begun there, and I don't want to hold anything up. Dave, in good faith, submitted, the application. I guess just in my opinion, it would require a building permit, and that we should approve this one, is what my thoughts are, but I'm willing to entertain ideas from Bob and John on this.
Yeah, I thought we were doing the $10,000 limit as a guideline, personally.
Well, and I've only been here since the end of March, but I wasn't aware of any applications that have come across since I've been here for work that was valued over $10,000 that we didn't require a permit for, but I could be wrong. But I don't remember any. Do you remember any?
I would have to go back through, but I would suggest that, yes, that's the case.
Yeah.
But I don't think that the Masons are going to have an issue with having that be issued a building permit.
Yeah.
I don't foresee that as a problem. And I think it's a great thing, because I think the voters did say that
Right.
we want to implement the state building code. So I've got no issue with issuing a permit.
Well, and I think that's the directive we got from the voters. Anything over, work over $10,000.
And I'm hearing that from the board too, so I guess I would entertain a motion to accept the, approve the building permit for Dave and Gene Mason, map V3 lot 8, to replace existing windows in same style and size.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
I hope he's getting some good energy savings out of that.
That's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money to
Payback
spend.
time there.
Windows.
Which one am I looking at now?
You want to start at the top?
Well, it's one out next up, so.
We have a question in the audience from Dan then.
Just a second, Dad, please. Yeah, we're going to go in ease of just to clear them out. I guess I'll start at the top, it makes more sense.
As
Dad?
Andy's back is to us, could I ask him to speak up just a bit?
Oh, certainly, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, well, I've got it on top here now, so let's go into the Hannah Properties building permit here. I understand, Andy, you were recommending approval of this application, so.
Yes.
Which one are we on? I'm sorry, Hannah?
Hannah, I'd entertain a motion to approve the building permit for Hannah Equity Partners LLC, map R8, lot 22. And I think we need to probably discuss what we're approving here, so.
Value of the work.
The value of the work, the
We
state
don't
of
have
it.
a value, I'm going to go take a look at what's going on out there. So most of this work has already been done. This was a permit after the fact. Some of the town received a few calls about work going on there. So that's, I don't know if you recall that the town had received a few complaints. I went out and investigated. We sent the owner, or the town sent the owner a note and said, you need to apply for a building permit. That has now happened, and I had a question about setbacks from 16. I have since heard back from.
Oh, this is the one
from
on
DOT. Yes, by
the Blake House.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
The setbacks are okay on that?
They are. Yes, we just make it.
The value of the work on the application anyway is $8,200 for the interior work. So I guess the way I'm looking at this to start anyway is that the deck outside would require a building permit, but the interior work inside the existing footprint would not. And I understand that the deck's already in place and there, so it's kind of a after the fact sort of thing. But I've got several different issues that I want to address with this. This is a property that we issued a violation notice for, building without a permit and building within the setback. Really one of the first questions I have towards this is, Andy, I saw from your email that you had received notice from the town offices that work was reportedly being done on this property. Diane, are you aware of how we received notice that work was being done on this property and who that notice was from?
I don't recall who they got. I have to talk to Alba.
Okay.
Is it important that you have names?
It could be. I'm trying to understand a lot of different aspects of what went on with this property.
I recall two individuals, two separate households complaining. I also am concerned that if we do find out who it is and divulge names, that they may not want to have their names divulged. So I'm not quite sure how you feel about that as a board.
Well, I guess one of my biggest concerns with this property is that we issued a violation notice on Richard Levine for what was done on this property, and I did go up and visit the site, and I can't quite understand how the matter got to where it did, and why it's taken since August to get this on the agenda and cleared. This really could have been a very simple matter in my mind, and I'm a little bit disappointed with the way we've handled it. Andy, and I want to go back to when we issued the violation notice. If you recall, I'd asked you for information on what ascertained the facts for of what we were citing in violation, A, being building without a permit, and 2, being the setback. And in the email and the conversation on the phone that I had with you, you said, on August the 4th, 2012, 11 a.m., I returned to the site having not received a building permit application. I noted work is continuing. Quickly shot distance from the construction to the edge of Route 16, roughly 30 feet. I guess first off, I'd like to ask you, what method did you use to measure?
I used a laser, and it was in the rain. I responded to another phone call as to what's going on up there. Have we got a building permit application? So I did go up there. I shot it in the rain. I may have had an obstruction of the laser. I have since pulled a tape from the center line of the road, and we're just over 60 feet.
From the center line of the road. So I guess my next question for you would be, we're talking about the property on 998 Route 16.
If you're sure. It's the one right before the Blake House Road.
Can't really see it from the
Is
road,
that,
right?
is that the property?
It is, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so from the center line of the road, what kind of distance would you be looking for to be just clearing?
Well, I just heard from DOT, that road from Blake House, the setback goes, it changes in that location. So we go from, we're at 3 rods, which is roughly 33 feet from the center line, and then we'd have our 50-foot setback, because that's the right-of-way. We'd have 50 feet from that right-of-way. And from the right-of-way, I'm roughly 60 feet, 61 and change.
Okay.
And that's pulled at tape, and of course, we're at elevation, and as we all know, we're measuring straight line. We're not measuring up and down hills and over brush, and so that's, my method is fairly inaccurate. It's not the same as a survey, but it errs on the side of the owner.
So at that point on the road, the right-of-way is 3 rods.
Yes.
And then the setback's 50 feet from that.
From
line.
that, yes.
And so they're 10 feet within.
They are.
Okay.
They're just outside of that setback, so they are in the clear.
Right,
Yeah.
10 feet in.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
what I meant to say.
Yeah.
I worded that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The setback issue aside, as far as what we measure from and the distance we'd be measuring it from, I think is something that we're going to have to tackle as a board sometime in the future. I don't think it's an immediate issue as far as how we do it, but I think by rights what we surely should be looking at is no matter what road it is, be measuring 75 feet from the center line. And that's going to give us well clear of the of any right-of-ways that the state might have on its roads. Because the primary concern of the state is that nobody builds inside the right-of-way. Outside the right-of-way, the state doesn't care. But in that section of the road, at last meeting, and again, this is something that began in August. At last meeting, we had had a discussion about the right-of-way and what it was up there. It turns out to be pretty interesting. On this property, there happens to be a right-of-way monument right at the base of his driveway, and it's very easy to determine what the right-of-way is for that property. The measurement that Amanuensis survey took on the property showed the setback, and this is by a surveyor, so I'm assuming they must have used some fairly accurate devices to determine the distance. They had 66 feet from the edge of the right-of-way, not from the edge of the road. I went up and visited the property and took measurements myself. I had them approximately 84 feet from the edge of the road, and I had them at 72 feet. And again, I used a tape and it probably wasn't incredibly accurate, but I had them at 72 feet from the edge of a 33-foot right-of-way. So again, I guess I'm going to reflect back to our original basis for issuing the violation notice was that they were 30 feet from the edge of the road, which would be a very clear, very easy to see, understand violation of the setback. And in looking at this property, I really have a hard time understanding how we could have been even remotely concerned about setback on this issue. It just, it doesn't measure up, literally. I mean, the deck is 84 feet from the road. It's 66 feet from the edge of a 34-foot right-of-way.
No, and not defending myself, but keep in mind that we've had several complaints about this. I've been up there, when we started, there was no clear line of sight to the road. In August, when I was looking at this, you couldn't even see the cabin from the road. I had to drive by there 3 times to find this property. So now it's very clear. Now I did not see the right-of-way mark from the state. The state couldn't even give me a right-of-way marker there. So if you found one, DOT doesn't seem to be aware of it. I did meet with Bob from Amanuset. I met at his office. He did show me what he had gone up and what he thought was right. But he, again, if he had given me a stamp plan and said, this is my survey of the site, then we're good to go. Then the state is fine with that also. If we have a registered designer or a registered surveyor that gives us a piece of paper and puts their stamp on it and says, there you are, we're good. But we also, the big picture here is that we had someone that was building without a building permit. Regardless of the setback, the construction, there was construction going on outside of the footprint of the building, and that's what town had received complaints about.
And that piece that's on Hannah Equity Partners, that they started work without filing an application. And so, the measurements, how close or whatever, I mean, as long as there's due diligence, then everybody's doing the best they can, that's fine. My question is, I think the one thing that was significant, because this was a significant issue with us, because we filed a violation on that.
So it's the board saying that...
Well, here's my question.
Right.
If it came to our town office anonymously to somebody, and then you went out and looked into it, what is our policy on that? So have we got citizens, any citizen in this town, and maybe this is a bigger question than for this issue, but can any citizen in this town hand work to Andy? I mean, is there a phone call going to a town office and then you're responding to every phone call? Should selectmen be involved when this stuff's going on? That's the piece I'm not totally clear on, how that works.
In my understanding, because in the past people would call me directly, I have asked, and town staff, I'm fairly certain that they're taking these complaints in writing. It's not an anonymous phone call saying, so-and-so is doing something, check it out, click. So my understanding is that they're getting these things in writing.
So do we have a complaint in writing, Diane?
No, we don't. We request in writing, but there are times when people refuse to because they don't want to be, they don't want their identity to be known.
Did you request this complaint to be submitted, formalized in writing by the person that called?
I believe we got these requests, we took them by phone, okay? And the individuals, if I recall correctly, didn't want their identity, didn't want
Yeah,
people,
right.
didn't want to be known.
Well, and I'm just trying to connect this. I know an anonymous phone call right now on a drunk driver, I'm following so-and-so and he's weaving all over the road. That doesn't even rise to action anymore unless you won't identify yourself, is my understanding. I'm not sure that that's good policy for us to act on things that people won't put their names to.
I agree with that. I thought it was, correct me if I'm wrong though, but isn't it the onus on the building person to prove that they're within the setback as opposed to we have to go and measure it?
Correct. We don't have to go out and measure anything.
it is,
So,
it is on the
The plan was
applicant.
done, right? The Amanuensis had done a plan, and we just never got it, or they never forwarded
Well,
because there wasn't any building permit involved.
This is what I have an issue with, Andy, and
Yeah.
I apologize, I'm kind of piling up on you about the measurement
Sure.
issue, and that's not what my real criticism is here. My criticism is the policy that allowed this to get to where it did. And Bob, I think that the issues that you raised there are really my main concerns with this. You know, we again received complaints, I'm assuming sometime in August, about this issue. And, you know, someone building without a permit. And, you know, I looked at what was built there, and this is it. You know, that's what was built. And this was built sometime this summer. And here we are in December, still trying to resolve this issue for Hannah Equity Partners. Now, did they build something without a permit that required one? Yes. And is that at their fault? Yes. But there's different ways to deal with this type of issue. You know, if the Board of Selectmen had been, I mean, I don't know when the Board of Selectmen became apprised of the situation, but it was, I believe, it wasn't in August. I don't even know if it was in September. I think we were first notified of it as a board in October. And I look at this, and the way I would deal with the situation, and it is the Board of Selectmen who is supposed to, we're the ones that are making these decisions. And I would have simply gone to the contractor and said, listen, technically you should have had a building permit for this. It would have been approved. You know, for the future reference, make sure that you submit an application when you go to do work like this. And the problem could have ended there. It escalated. We issued a violation notice, and consequently, this person had to spend X amount of dollars to have a survey done, all based on some anonymous information, really. And this is why, you know, one of the things that we do, like to me, if the issue was just building without a permit, okay, and here we are in October, and it was just building without a permit, and this is what was done, it would have been much less of a concern of mine. My major concern with this was that it was supposedly in the setback, and my issue is that I understand a 10-foot, 15-foot difference in kind of what a measurement is. But when you're off by the amount that you're off, and that's what we issue a violation notice on, and that's what forces a man to spend X amount of dollars to have a survey done on his property to prove to us that it's well outside any setback concerns. I just, you know, I question the motivations behind how it got to the point that it did. And I guess I would just express a severe amount of disappointment in that it escalated to where it did, and here we are in December from August, and we still haven't resolved the matter.
Well, my first trips out there were with the building permit application, as I do.
And again, I'm not loading up on you. That's exactly the way you should handle it.
And so, I met with the contractor, very nice guy. I'm ashamed to say that he remembers me. I couldn't recall his name, but the building had been gutted. It doesn't look like it does right now, but the deck had indeed been constructed. I told him that he needed to fill out a building permit application and submit that to the town. He informed me that the building owner, the person that had just purchased this, was on vacation. You know, I didn't think it rose to a level where we need to interrupt anybody's vacation. The owner and I have exchanged phone calls. He was going to fill out a building permit application. It wasn't quickly forthcoming, and which again, it's roughly an 8x10 deck, not a huge issue. I don't see a life safety threat here. I fully anticipated that the owner would make good on his word and apply for a building permit application. My question, after looking out Jerry, if you've been out there, I've spent my whole life looking at measurements. I can tell you, at that angle, it is fairly challenging. I wouldn't have guessed that we were that close. in regardless of if we're requiring the center line, the setback from the center lines, this is news to me, to be 75 feet throughout the whole town. That makes my job a lot easier.
Well, no,
I don't have to, DOT, that section of 16 goes in and out all over the place. It's not a set measurement. And it's going to affect a lot of homes there.
Understood, and that's why, I mean, I'm not proposing that we change our, to my knowledge, we don't have much, any policy as far as determining setbacks are concerned, other than, the sideline of the right-of-way. What that is, I mean, is, I think that what we're going to have to do, work towards that, is we're going to have to go back and review when it was adopted, and I have found in the minutes from the planning board when they adopted setbacks, and it was actually at a special town meeting in December of 1974. But for months leading up to that, they had several conversations on what they were basing it on, and I think that from that we can kind of establish that, and then have discussions with the planning board to do this. So I'm not suggesting at all that we make a rule now saying that we're forever going to measure 75 feet from the center line to determine the setback. I mean, I understand the difficulty in determining it, particularly on state roads where the state DOT might not even have a clue. We have the added advantage here that there happens to be a monument right there that's Amanuensis flagged. It probably wasn't there, Andy, when you went up to originally measure it. It could have been buried in the ground. This is very close to ground level, so it's easy to see how you would have missed that. So I'm not suggesting that you should know what the right-of-way was there and even take accurate measurements there, but
Well, here's what I'm suggesting, and I know we're here to deal with a building permit application, number one. And I think we should entertain that, or we're going to be here all night, number one. Number two, I think there needs to be an understanding on what kind of complaints go into our town office that are acted on and not acted on. That concerns me. And then that whole drunk driving issue is because if somebody's following their neighbor they've got a bone of contention with, and they call them in. I mean, we don't know what motivated those phone calls into the town office, who those people were, what kind of relationship they had with the homeowner, and the next thing you know, you're being potentially inserted into the middle of an issue that has nothing really at the heart of the matter to do with the building permit. I'm not saying that happened here, but that clearly could happen when we're acting on anonymous phone calls, and I don't think we should be doing that. And so I think that, I don't know if this rises to the level of emotion tonight, but we should not be acting on complaints that people won't put their name on.
And I guess most importantly, what should happen in my mind anyway is that when complaints, but I guess the way we have been facilitated for as long as I remember, when building permit applications or complaints about building came into the town office, it was the Board of Selectmen were engaged immediately from that. In other words, we were notified that first. And then, I think it would be wise for us to go back to that policy. And then if the board decides to engage your services to investigate it, then we do.
And to shelter Andy from things.
So I think that's a wonderful idea. However, I'm thinking of just another, it wasn't months ago where we had the call that there are cement trucks rolling. And had I not been able to get up there and verify that grounding and reinforcement had gone into this, it was for a swimming pool, there was a potential problem.
And understood, Andy, but I got to, I mean.
But so if you want to wait and you guys, issue the go order, I'm fine by that.
Well, was that another anonymous complaint, Diane?
Yes.
And so there was nothing in writing
No.
to document that?
People are very reluctant to give you anything right. This was
Well, I
a
think
neighbor.
homeowners have rights too, and property owners have rights, and I
This
just...
was a neighbor, and I know who it is this time.
I just have concerns.
I understand what you're saying, Andy, but what I would say towards that is I'm available pretty nearly 24/7.
Yeah.
I don't travel out of town very often, and when I do, I usually notify the town office and say, hey, I'm going to be out of town for the day. And I think that there's special circumstances where people do the common sense thing. But I think that 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, it would be very easy for the office to contact the Board of Selectmen before engaging with you to facilitate something like that.
Okay.
Now, all that's going to change probably in March, so we're talking some short time here anyway.
Right. In the interim, though.
So
that makes sense.
I think that maybe if we just try to do things in that manner, then we might protect ourselves from this type of thing being drawn out for this amount of time. And one thing I would say towards, you're recommending we approve the application. The deck's already there and done. And one thing I'm going to suggest that we do with this, and again, if there's any hesitancy towards this whatsoever from my colleagues, I'm willing to entertain that. But I'm going to recommend that we approve this permit and then we waive the permit fee. Because I don't know how much money the guy had to spend in order to have a survey done, but I'm guessing it was more than $25. And I feel that it's really the fault of the Board of Selectmen for that occurring, for a lack of a concrete, coherent system where, that had to get engaged there.
Now, if we had an application, like, we're going to talk about this one next.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, so if we had an application that showed that the appropriate setbacks in the right-of-way, then I don't think that's an issue. But that isn't the town's responsibility to do that, and it isn't, as far as I'm considering, as far as my duties are concerned, it's not my responsibility to prove that. So
I think I think that it's not your responsibility to prove it, but at the same time, it is the responsibility of the homeowner to prove it.
Correct.
And when they can't prove it to you, meaning to us through you, then that's what we have the Zoning Board of Adjustment for.
I think we're dealing with an issue here that is not evolved to the point where it's really clear to people that want to do work when they do. I've never seen anything like what I saw in that picture referred to as a deck before. I mean, that's a deck. It just looks like an oversized step. But so I can understand how a homeowner could you mean I needed a building permit for that? So, and just not understanding what work requires somebody to go through this process. And so I want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Like he would have done it had he known. I want to assume that. And we can move on from there. But I'm ready to approve it. If you've looked at it and you're up there taking pictures and everything, and you want to recommend that we waive the cost, then I have no problem with that. And we can move on. But the guy probably just wasn't totally clear on it. And you know what? There are a lot of people that have spent a lot of time looking into this that aren't crystal clear on when to and when not to either. So.
And that's the issue that I have as well, is that it isn't a clear process, and when we go so far as to actually issue violation notices, if I was a member of the community and I received a violation notice from the town, I would take that very seriously, and it would be something that would hang over my head and wear on me, and I would be keep me up at night kind of thing. So our actions are having effect on people's real lives, and when we don't have a concrete system in place to deal with it, I think that's the number one thing I think we should take away from this, is that we don't have our current process for facilitating these things. And Andy, this again, you're sitting here, it seems like you are constantly taking this kind of load for me, and I don't mean to direct this at you. I really mean to direct this at the Board of Selectmen, and I've been sitting here for almost 3 years now, and I might be sounding like a broken record, but I really think that the Board of Selectmen needs to get our act together in how I don't think we can continue. I don't think our current process can continue. I think that it can continue through March, and I think that that's fine. But I think that after March, one way or another, we need to change what we're currently doing and decide what that is for the betterment of the town.
And that moves us to agenda item 7 a little later.
So I would say, I entertain a motion to approve the application.
So moved.
Waiving the building permit fee.
So moved.
Second.
John, did you have any?
I'm really not for waiving the fee. I think, I personally think that that's part of the process. The guy made a mistake. Well, hey, you had to pay for a surveyor. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
he didn't do it the right way, and I think the fee is a minimal fee, and I really think it should go to the books, personally.
Well, then, did you second that motion?
I did.
Okay. You want to withdraw the second, and I'll withdraw the motion, and we can disconnect the two, and we can approve the application and then discuss the fee?
I don't want to belabor the fee issue. I think that that is outside the norm, and I understand that aspect of it. So,
Okay, well, I'll withdraw if you withdraw the second, I'll withdraw the motion, because the motion included waiving the fee.
Right.
You want to do that?
Sure.
Okay, and I'll withdraw the motion.
I'll withdraw the second.
I entertain a motion to approve the building permit for Hannah Equity Partners for the construction of the deck, the interior work not requiring a permit for map R8, lot 22.
So moved.
As better stated anyway. All those in favor?
All right.
All right?
Aye.
And that's a $75 fee?
It's a $25 fee.
$25 fee.
And they've already submitted a check. I'm assuming
He's
probably
got it.
haven't cashed it
He's
yet,
got
but-
it. Okay. They're not progressively getting harder, are they?
I hope not.
I think that, I think, well, no, they could be.
Yeah. Jared's been saving the best for last.
7:30. 6:30 would be ideal.
I'll try to be quicker.
It's not your fault. You're doing your best you can.
And we will too.
The next up is Bradley Bowinger. Remove south end bedroom and square off end and replace bathroom, lift house, and secure with full foundation. And this is the one, Andy, that you're not recommending that we approve, as it seems to be in
Correct.
the setback.
And I'll walk you guys through this. Here's an Amanuense survey. Okay, Amanuense has laid out what they consider the buildable lot, showing the setbacks from the lot line. Okay, here's our property boundaries.
Yeah.
Okay, so 25 in from the side yard,
Okay.
25 from the rear, 25 from the side, 25, which really should be 25 from the front. So really, this road, this is a corner lot.
Yeah.
Our town ordinance says that we shall be 50 feet from any right-of-way. So this road has a 40-foot right-of-way, and we have to have a 50-foot setback from that, which this is not, as Amanuense showed, this is not the buildable area. This actually is the buildable area on this lot, which coincidentally, this is where he wants to square off the addition. So I think that I don't see how we could possibly issue a permit for that.
Because it's non-conforming or making it more non-conforming?
Because it's making it more non-conforming. We're allowing building inside of, this would be the buildable area on this lot. So this would be the only area of the addition that would be able to be permitted. I'm sorry, this would not be.
Exclude,
So this whole house is essentially already non-conforming. Now, going back, I see we've got a new deck that was approved in 2009, and because full disclosure, I recommended approval for this deck. The then owner did his site plan. I've never been out to the site before. He did his site plan showing that we had a 52-foot setback from the right-of-way, which was actually the edge of the road, which is where his property is, because the right-of-way is on the front. So this deck that I recommended approving shouldn't be here.
Well,
But that's water under the bridge, it's 2009. But this is the only buildable area on this lot.
when would they like to begin construction? Do you know?
I don't, and I think that they're,
Is this because it's a corner lot that they get
yeah.
hammered?
I mean,
Hammered,
and it
yeah.
is a tiny lot. This is like 4/10 of an acre.
Where is
It's
this?
really, it's on Spring Road out off Francis and Maloon. You know, so it's, I think,
Oh, this is the one across the Maloon Road Bridge,
yes.
over into that area?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it is truly a tiny lot. So I don't see any way for the board, other than violating the zoning ordinance, to approve this. I think that it's one of those things that we're gonna have to deny, and then it's gonna have to go to the ZBA. I mean, that's really the avenue that the town has for that.
Well, then, and hearing that, I have no intention of supporting and approving an application tonight.
And, you know, this is why we have ZBAs. I mean, is to, you know, it's, you know, we don't have to be right in how we rule, and that's why that, you know, they can go to the ZBA under administrative correction or under variance, and that's why we have the ZBA. And
But you can see here's the quandary is we show the setback lines in this, of course, is a surveyor. We show the setback lines, but they are not compliant with the town ordinance, you know, so sometimes it makes it difficult.
yeah, and I mean, this is one of those things I think where, you know, there's lots of questions to be asked around this issue that we're not going to be able to answer.
Right.
So one of the ones I questioned is, like, if you look at the wording when the 50-foot setback was adopted, there's wording in there that says if a property can't reasonably conform with it, it doesn't need to. And I'm not sure if that's referring to just the 200-foot frontage or the setback as well.
Right.
That's not. I don't think that's what we do. I think that's what the ZBA does.
You have to look at the ordinance just like I have to look at the ordinance, and regardless of how nice these people are, you have to say, this is the ordinance that we're given, so here's the avenue for correcting this.
Right.
If we've made a mistake, the ZBA, it belongs with the ZBA.
But in looking, you know, here we are. This is the first time we've seen this, and you know, I think we've taken a very detailed look at this. You know, and we're talking about a matter of feet, not a matter of 30, 40 feet. We're talking about, you know, it's the measurements there seem to be very close, and
well, we're talking a matter of 25 feet. So
well, I don't see that.
So here's 25 to here, here's 25 to here.
But he's expanding in an area that he can expand into. So the footage is very minimal there, but it's still, the best that we can ascertain is that it's expanding a non-conforming structure. And that yes, but what I'm saying is that I think we've done due diligence in determining the amount of feet we're talking about here. It's close, and it's not like one of those things where we're way off and like, wait a minute here, we're climbing up the wrong tree here. To me, it's like this is very close. It's a clear cut and situation where it belongs in the ZBA, and I see no reason to deny the permit and move on.
Yeah. Sounds good to me.
So all those in favor of denying the building permit application for Bradley Bow under map R8 lot 23, I'd entertain a motion to deny. I would entertain a motion to deny the permit.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair,
Dan?
could you please consider
Oh,
citing
yeah.
a section?
That's
I think I
4.
did in my recommendation, did I not?
Oh, yes, you did.
It's on the recommendation.
Just for the record for Mark.
Okay.
Martha, that motion,
Yay, or they might not have
it's because I'm looking at the wrong recommendation. Oh, there we go, thanks.
Madam Secretary.
Andy helped me out there. I think it's 4.1.3.1 or 4.3.1.3.
setback, hang on.
Nope, no.
Sorry. It is 4.3.1.2.
That's what that motion was made with, Martha.
4.3.
Should we also cite the expansion of a non-conforming structure? Is that 2 point? Does
We
it,
can, you can have both.
I don't think it hurts.
Yeah. Non-conforming structure, it's 2.2.3.
So that motion included both of those. That's what we're citing for the violation. Thanks, Diane, for
She's good.
keeping us honest.
Oh.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks, John.
She's already got that
I'm
in
awake
there.
today.
Ella already took care of it for you.
That was Bollinger. We've already done Mason, so now we're at Robert and Paula Hoy.
Yes.
And this one, you are not recommending we approve, and I think that I would agree that, we need to see state-approved septic design before we go anywhere with that one.
Yeah, and this is the one that we had a 30-day extension.
Right.
Gave them another 30-day extension. I spoke with the contractor. He said that he's got an approved septic plan. The town hasn't seen it yet, so he'll show up with that, and then we'll.
So I would entertain a motion to deny the permit based on pending an approved septic design to the town, and pending the
Setback.
locate the property boundaries and show them on the site plan to demonstrate compliance with town ordinances.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
That's they kind of, it's chicken and egg scenario. They want approval from us before they spend the money to get a
Right,
septic
sure.
design. And if they've done the septic design already, all they need to do is get it into us. And
Right.
then we can reconsider
How
it.
long have we been dealing with one now?
Well, we haven't really been,
It's-
we've been really waiting for them to get the
We
septic.
have been, but we've extended the 30-day as long as we can. The interesting is, the state says we can go 180 days, and then we can re-up that another 180 days. But the ordinance says no, we just have to act on it.
That brings us to Brian and Jill Shaw. They're requesting an extension of their permit. And Andy, if I read this correctly, you are recommending approval for the extension?
I am. I found out about it this afternoon. They have actually applied for a new septic permit. They're relocating their existing septic. If we had an expired permit or we didn't have an approved septic, I would suggest that we not renew it. But where we've already got a septic that I think it's good till 2014 now, where we still have an state-approved septic on the site, I think it's appropriate to extend this.
Have you seen the septic plan?
I have. I just looked at it briefly.
Is it relatively the same?
It's close, but if I recall correctly, the soils on that site are really not very good, and I think that they've had several submissions before.
Good.
I did talk to Burr about that, and he did caution me that, this has been resubmitted several times, same surveyor, but it's...
Still based on the original one.
We still have an approved septic there, so I think that's what I'm willing to hang my hat on.
In regard to building permit application, it's really their risk. If they can't get a septic system approved by the state, they can't use and occupy that building,
Correct.
regardless of whether we do this or not. So
Right.
I guess I'll entertain a motion to approve the extension of the building permit number 2011-48.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Not to take up much more of your guys' time, but yes. So residential building permit inspections. You guys are welcome to take. I've just gotten recertified But if you guys sometime want to take a look at what it requires for residential inspections in not covering sheathing so that we can count how many nails are in a sheet of plywood, how many nails go into trusses, and so it illustrates the fact that having somebody available to look at this stuff to make sure that it's compliant before it gets covered, there's no way to verify anything once siding's gone on and once the roofing's gone on. And while it's the contractor's responsibility to comply with the state building code, there really is no way to verify it unless, we're on site.
So,
It was a fascinating 2-day course. If you're into lots of dry.
That book was fascinating.
Yeah.
like my calculus.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That demonstrates a true passion.
Yeah. So.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah. So it was all kinds of fun.
That could honestly be, I'm not sure at what level we want to get into the details of what we're going to put before the voters in March, but I think that is actually helpful in regards to explaining to people what it will look like from A to Z as far as how we do the building permit process when we design a process and move forward with something. I think that's it.
And interestingly enough, ISO, I'm working with ISO to come up with, to write some software to make this inspection process much easier. ISO wants to see digital records for inspections and everything checked off. So I'm working with them to come up with an app to make that easier to do. So yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Before we close out agenda item 6, are we clear, just moving forward right now informally, on how we're going to act on anonymous phone calls from here on out?
I'm not taking any action. The town will contact you guys. You'll decide whether or not it rises to the level of needing a building permit or needing me to go out and take a look at something.
He wants to make himself available 24/7, he can, and that's great. And so for now, you're right, come March, hopefully we'll have something that's a little bit more clear and solid.
Well, you're fortunate in that you have a select person that is able to fill that role, and is willing to volunteer that. I mean, there's a lot of people that have other things going on, and aren't always available.
I feel so fortunate.
Yeah.
But, right, okay.
So that's just because you have to drive to the notch every
You don't
day.
get dragged.
I'm not sure I'd trade for that.
I just don't want you dragged through stuff like that. Andy.
Very light ratings.
No, it's,
Andy, just so I'm sure you really want to stay the rest of the evening with us. But,
I'd love to.
and I'm not sure how much help you'd be able to be in the next part, because we're talking kind of about different aspects of what this is going to be here, but you're certainly welcome to stay in the next part of the conversation and offer.
You may find it fascinating.
Anything beats college applications.
All right. So we already handled the manure pile. We're just to item number 7.
Talking about me? Am I excused? Is that what you're saying?
Scott, thanks for
Thank you.
for staying here through this. Sarah, thanks for being here. I've been watching the planning board's progress through this process of putting forth some ballot questions for the March vote, and had back in I guess I don't need to go back that far. At any rate, the planning board's at a position now, and Scott, anywhere you think I might speak incorrectly, just correct me, where they've made 2 motions that have passed, and one is to put forth the ballot question adopting a process for the enforcement of the state building code. They also adopted another, and the wording on that one's been pretty well ironed out by the planning board. They, however, passed a motion to offer on the ballot a question that would exempt single-family dwellings from that process. And this is what's kind of spurred my getting involved in this, is the difficulty presented by that question. That question, I believe, Scott, the wording has not been constructed for yet. It's just been basically put out there that the planning board wants to put a question on the ballot that would exempt single-family dwellings from the enforcement process of the state building code. And just to be clear, so people don't get uptight about this, this is from the enforcement process. I think everyone involved in this recognizes that all construction in New Hampshire, whether it's a single family or multi-family or commercial property, has to comply with the provisions of the state building code and the provisions of the Jackson zoning ordinance. But the problem presented with the planning board that I see as having the single family question exemption on the ballot is, how do you construct the administration of the zoning ordinance in such a way to do this that it doesn't make the ballot question extremely complicated and hard to follow. So what I'm putting forth as a proposal is to do what the town council recommended that we do. And it's also what the LGC recommends that you do. And that is to pull the state building code out of the zoning ordinance and have a standalone ordinance of the town that we would add to the other ordinances that the town has. And that the reasoning behind that is to allow for a much simpler question to exempt single-family homes. If we're going to amend Section 16 of the zoning ordinance to make it into compliance with the state building code requirements, it's pretty complicated, and I recommended that you strike all of Section 16 and rewrite it entirely. But the planning board seemed more wishing more to leave Section 16 intact and just strike words and add words. And to me, when you look at that question, you're talking multiple pages and something that's complicated and hard to follow. And if we were to simply ask a question on the ballot, one, adopting the New Hampshire State Building Code and a process for the enforcement of it, and then we establish the Zoning Board of Adjustment as the Building Code Board of Appeals. We establish the position of the building inspector, who shall have the authority to issue building permits and certificates of occupancy and to perform inspections, and then require certificates of occupancy to be issued and the like as an ordinance for the town. Then we have that question. And then the second question would be simply to amend that first question in such a way to exempt single-family homes from that enforcement process, and still make it clear that those homes still need to comply with the state building code and Section 16 of the zoning ordinance. And what that really allows us to do is multiple things.
Before we get too deep into that, it would really be helpful for me to just get a bit of a recap, because with the two planning board members here, as well as our liaison to the planning board, just how you got to this point.
Well, I was going to get there.
Okay.
Maybe just not the best route. Maybe I tried to explain too much along the way.
There is no best route.
At any rate, I recognized the problem that the planning board was in, so I contacted Scott.
Right.
And said, Scott, I'm starting to get worried that we're running out of time here. We need to get, I feel,
right,
and I believe the planning board feels, I think everyone feels that we need to get something on the ballot. I think everyone's...
The one thing that's mostly unanimous among the board is that we need to come up with a process that's consistent with what the state requires, that's more transparent than what we currently have, and perhaps not quite the same unanimity, but that it absolutely has authority according to what the state requires for authority.
And so when I talked to Scott about it, I said, I'm looking at where the planning board is, and they're close. And then when the issue of the single-family exemption came up, it's like, but that could throw a monkey wrench in the whole thing. And that's why I'm thinking, like, we need to really seriously consider pulling it out of zoning and making it a standalone ordinance. And my biggest question that I have for this board and for the planning board at this point in time is, is that something that we can agree on? And if it isn't, how do we solve that single-family dwelling thing, given that we've got less than a month here, pretty much to get something on concrete written down? And how do we do that? And one of the things I proposed to Scott is, and I think this question is up in the air, and I think we need some feedback from the planning board, is would it be easier at this point in time for the Board of Selectmen to propose the questions? And we have the authority to do that. In fact, when I talked to Christine Fillmore from the LGC about this back in April of this year, she recommended that that's actually how we do it, that the Board of Selectmen actually put forth a proposed question. But I think if we were to do that, we would want consensus from this board and from the planning board. Is that that's our best option at this point in time.
And certainly we would need to, because, or mostly need to, because.
Planning board still has the questions pending.
We've already passed, motions to put a question on the ballot, to put the option of exempting single family on the ballot. And so we can't, unless we, as a board, decide to do something different, i.e. we're having the Board of Selectmen do something, we can't simply not do what we've already voted to do.
And rather than...
And we certainly, I think we probably could all agree that the planning board doing something, the Board of Selectmen doing something in parallel would just totally confuse everybody.
And so you catch me up to speed as the selectman who is not the liaison to the planning board. We've got 2 planning board members here. We've got an alternative here. We've got the selectman's rep here. Help me get wrapped around where you are, how you got here, and why you think this is the best way forward.
Well, the only modify there is I'm not sure Scott thinks this is the best way forward yet.
I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the planning board. Why is this your recommendation?
This isn't.
The planning board.
This isn't the recommendation of the planning board. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well, the recommendation of the planning board at this point is that we establish authority to enforce the state building code in the way that the state requires, and that according to the draft that we have right now to do so. There are some things that I think everyone is in agreement need to be cleaned up. The $10,000 exemption simply is inconsistent with what the state requires for building code enforcement. I think you demonstrated tonight the difficulty from the property owner in assessing what's going to be required for a permit, etc. So that's what got us going, was I think the town meeting, the past town meeting made it clear that the town wants some form of enforcement to happen. And we perceive that the current process, the planning board perceives the current process is not really being what it needs to be. So that's what moved us forward, trying to come up with something that was more acceptable. There is, beyond that, that's where opinions on the planning board become divided. And one of those divisions is to whether the town should enforce the state building code for all construction, commercial, multifamily, single family, or whether single family construction should be exempted. I don't believe that there's anyone on the planning board that feels that commercial has to be inspected, and multifamily, because I don't recall, does that have to be inspected?
It does, and it's who it has to be inspected for is up in the air. I mean, the local enforcement process is optional by the locality, and the state enforces for.
The state has the right to inspect anything if they choose to do so.
That's not entirely correct.
So this first.
The state fire marshal has.
Not entirely correct.
Well, in any case, commercial is always inspected. The town doesn't.
Right.
Well, the state has 30 days to do the inspection. If it doesn't, then the construction can continue.
Right. Does that ever happen?
It does.
In any case,
the state resources are very slim. That's the benefit to having local processes, that you don't hold up commercial. You don't hold up developers, whether they're commercial or single family.
in any case, the one division of the board is whether we should include single-family residence or offer the option to the voters to exclude single-family residents.
So this first article, there is no division on the board.
Well, again, I
Wait,
guess, for-
hold on, just a minute.
Hold on.
But I can hear you anytime. And I do. But I really want to grab this opportunity to get directly back from the planning board how they feel about these issues.
There has been some opinion that why are we changing the process that we currently have beyond eliminating the $10,000 exemption for state building code enforcement?
Yeah.
But I'd say that, Sarah, if you want to chime in, that is somewhat, I'd say somewhat limited opinion on the board.
Right.
There's a wider opinion that single-family residence exclusion should be offered.
But this first piece here that came to us tonight was in our packet. Is
Bob,
this supported by?
Can I clarify something for you, please, Bob? Can I please clarify something for you?
So
This question that's prepared, that you're looking at before, I prepared it. The
you prepared it.
planning board. The planning board has not seen this question. Scott
had done that.
Scott has seen it.
Chris told me that.
I was trying to, but I didn't want to step on your toes too much.
I knew he was going to say that.
So you're still trying to find a way to come to an agreement on this type of a...
Right, so far, what we've done is we have a draft for...
Two drafts.
We have one draft that we're essentially ready to bring to public hearing for state building code enforcement for all construction.
Okay.
We have a motion to offer the exclusion of single-family residents from town and local enforcement, but we don't yet have any language drafted that has been passed by the board to bring to a public hearing.
And your draft isn't ready to come to us yet?
The draft, which simply modifies section 16, which eliminates $10,000 language and adds the enforcement and the building inspector then to enforce it. That draft is ready, it's been approved by the planning board, it's been edited and is ready to go. But there are some people on the planning board, some members who felt that the single-family homes should not be inspected, and that those members are the ones that proposed the having a second vote to eliminate the inspection process for single-family homes.
And that's a second separate amendment that would be voted on?
That was what?
This is, as Jerry said, it can be confusing.
So where's the first amendment that you have agreed on, but chose not to submit here for us to review tonight?
That's not them choosing.
I wasn't bringing anything to you tonight. This is, as Jerry explained, he believes that perhaps this ought to come more from your board than from the planning board. Maybe not so much who it comes from, but that it may be better in terms of clarity. If I'm speaking incorrectly, Jerry, let me know. But in terms of clarity and in terms of, I think Jerry's point is that the zoning ordinance is a zoning ordinance. And the building permit is really not a zoning thing. And
It gets adopted just like a zoning ordinance,
but an ordinance like a building permit ordinance towards enforcement of the state of a building code should exist outside of the zoning ordinance.
And he made that clear at our last annual meeting, on record, that that was his recommendation. And so that's a separate issue. That issue, whether we want that to happen, is going to determine how we're going to proceed with this, because we're also going to have to recommend that that come out, right? The amendment's going to have to be worded so that voters understand this is coming out, or is that our decision to remove it from the zoning ordinance? Or
It's not in the zoning ordinance right now.
The section 16 in the zoning ordinance right now.
Right.
My personal opinion is that works absolutely fine for zoning enforcement. I don't see, other than the certificate of occupancy issue, I don't see that that really needs to be changed if all we wanted to do is to provide a mechanism for enforcement of zoning ordinance. I think the $10,000 exemption, you know, I'm guessing that's fine so far as zoning ordinance enforcement is concerned. So if our two boards decide to have this outside the zoning ordinance, I guess my feeling is that we can essentially leave the zoning ordinance as is, as I said, perhaps with the exception of dealing with the certificate of occupancy. Although I don't know where, is that, how much that pertains to zoning versus building.
Well,
building code.
that issue in itself, Scott, really, and we're kind of jumping ahead where I think where Bob is on things, but would be resolved by this because, you know, we're establishing in the ordinance that people have to get certificates of occupancy. Single-family homes would not have to get certificates of occupancy, you know, by if the second question were to pass, and if it were not to pass, then they would be required to get a certificate of occupancy, and Section 16 really wouldn't matter. If the second question were to pass, then we would not be doing inspection. Then Section 16 excludes single-family homes from requiring a certificate of occupancy, and again, so we don't need to worry about the language there. If we were to adopt both of these, if the town were to adopt both of these ordinances, or the ordinance and then the amendment to the ordinance, then what can happen is Section 16 can remain intact. There may be some basically housekeeping type of amendments that we might make for the following year, but it wouldn't affect how we would enforce the state building code for everything more than single-family homes. For single-family homes, we would still have the luxury of requiring building permits for pursuant to Section 16. So Section 16 would still allow us to do, and this is what I think, the reason why I put it here was to allow for that, so that we weren't going to say that, you know, just because we're exempting them from the enforcement process for the state building code, we're still going to require that they get building permits, and that the only thing we would be recommending for the planning board to discuss the following year is changing the language from a building permit to a zoning compliance permit, and that's more of a housekeeping thing than it is a literal thing.
And I would say one of the confusing aspects of all of this is that there are several terms, building permit, building inspector, that are used for in both the zoning world and the building code world, and it's overlapping two things that really are separate things.
Yeah.
But one person can do both.
But one person can do both, but they really are two different jobs, just two different jobs.
And the big picture item, the big picture thing right now is that right now the planning board's getting to the point where it's almost got all the wording that it needs to. It doesn't have the wording for the second question amendment to it that it needs yet, and I'm very concerned about the ability to get something concrete in less than a month for a public hearing, by the time we get to the public hearing. So what I'm proposing as a solution is that the planning board can see that it won't the planning board would withdraw both of its motions and allow for the Board of Selectmen to propose the ordinance. And then the planning board could either, could vote to recommend it or not vote to recommend it to its, to how it wanted to be done. So given the time constraints that we're under, this is why I'm proposing that we do this. And what I'm proposing to do is that we discuss it here tonight to see if this is something that we can agree on proposing to the planning board, go to the next planning board meeting and discuss it with the planning board so that we can get a consensus. If we can't get a consensus, that's fine, and maybe this isn't the route to go. But I'm concerned about getting something coherent before the voters for...
I understand your concern, but I would say that we ought to do this the right way and not rush it and do it in a compromised way. I know the time is tight. I think that the planning board can get it done, and I think we're committed to, to have work sessions, have a separate public hearing, an additional meeting that's a public hearing for this issue, as opposed to combining it with the meeting, a regular meeting in January. So I Yeah, you're right, the timing is tight, but I think it can be done. And I guess I would say that if really the right way to do it is for the planning board to do it, then I still think the planning board should do it. But I'm not at all opposed to looking at doing it in your way, Jerry.
Well, and I should just say that that's why I think that if as many of us as possible, and John, I'm assuming you're planning on going anyway, can go to the next planning board meeting and just get a sense from the planning board where the planning board's at as far as the idea of removing it from zoning and having it be a standalone ordinance. And the logic again behind that is to allow for the second question to be asked in a very clear, crystal clear way. And also for the ease of not having to amend section 16. Sarah?
If you were to, the selectmen were to take this over as a selectmen's ordinance, would that then be on a ballot question, or would it be on the warrant?
It would be.
And would the ordinance have to be completely worked out and worded before it's voted on?
It would be on the ballot. The selectmen have the authority to submit any ordinance on the ballot that we choose, whether it's a zoning ordinance, a building code ordinance, a fireworks ordinance. We have the right to do that. That ordinance needs to be adopted just like any other zoning ordinance. It has to go on the ballot. This is one of the issues with the town meeting vote last year, was that it was put forth in a non-ballot way. It needs to be adopted the same way any other ordinance is adopted, and that's by a ballot question. So what would happen if I believe, and I'm not crystal clear on this yet, but if it's proposed by the Board of Selectmen, the planning board still needs to hold the public hearing for it, if I understand correctly. And you would either vote to recommend or not recommend the proposed ordinance and the amendments to the proposed ordinance. So, I mean, theoretically, we could submit the proposed ordinance, the amendment to the proposed ordinance, and the planning board could vote to recommend the ordinance and then vote to not recommend the amendment to the ordinance. That would be an option for the planning board. And again, this is something that, to me, it's a way of resolving some unknown issues right now, in a way that still gets something before the voters in a clearer way.
When you say the amendment to the ordinance?
And again, the wording that I put forth that we've discussed, is
that the
single family exemption?
Yes. Yeah, and the reason why I say that, I've talked with the LGC a little bit about it since I've talked to Scott and since the emails we've exchanged, Sarah. And the wording needs to change a little bit, particularly in how, because in the first question, when you're adopting an ordinance, you have to adopt the ordinance, in this case, a building code and the enforcement process. The second, if it's a multi-question question, then what you're doing is in the second question, you're amending what you adopted in the previous question. So the question would read, are you in favor of amending in this case, it would actually become the town building code, because once the town adopts a code, then it becomes the town building code. Then that becomes a separate question. And if it was proposed by the Board of Selectmen, the planning board would have the ability to recommend or not recommend either both or just one of the questions. I mean,
what happens if the ordinance doesn't pass and the amendment passes?
It wouldn't matter.
Okay. I didn't think it would, but that could happen.
It could happen, but it wouldn't affect it. Because
the ordinance,
but that's the importance of why you word the question that way, because it's an amendment to the ordinance. If the ordinance doesn't pass, then there's nothing to amend in that ordinance. Sarah?
As I say, you could word the second question. If the ordinance passes, are you in favor?
Actually, the RSA spells out very clearly how you have to word and it's the first question is, are you in favor of the adoption of this? And the question to amend that is, are you in favor of amending the ordinance? And then you state what it doesn't. Then that's the question, and then you state in topic form what that change to the ordinance is.
Now, do you have before the vote, you have to have the ordinance all the way written out and all the I's crossed and the T's dotted? for the voters?
No, you don't.
So not for the public hearings then either?
You don't, but I mean, I would recommend that we do have that ready for the public hearing so that we can,
You have time.
yeah. And sorry, just, I think that really what you've already prepared in most of your amendments to section 16, I think, is about all we really need to do towards that. And that the narrative becomes very easy at that point in time. And that's, I think, also the beauty of doing it this way, where we don't get hung up in this word or this word for changing section 16. It's crystal clear. This is what we're doing. To me, it's a simple question, not a simple question, but it's about as clear as we can make it. Larry, I think I get to my dad first, because he's had his...
That was my question to both Scott and Sarah and John, the alternate here. Do you see any objection not amending 16, but making it a separate building code as opposed to amending the zoning code to incorporate a building code? Is there a problem with having it? It seems to me that they're two separate things, and it should be separate. Do the members of the board have a problem with that?
Did we already take a vote on this much earlier in the year, though?
We didn't vote on it.
Okay, that's what I was
We did
saying.
discuss it. There was, I think, opinion in both directions, but I don't recall that there was any strong opinion one way or another.
Right, I think we just picked one route and went down that route.
So, but you don't have an objection to keeping it?
Personally, I don't.
And I didn't think anyone did. I didn't see a lot of objection, did you?
I understand the separation of it, and I think that's probably, and also that making it clear to the voters as to what they're voting on, I think that is a bonus as well.
And I would agree. I think the principle of it, yes, I would.
Is that the way you see it?
Okay.
My only question was, we have taken 2 votes, and it almost sounded like you wanted to ask us to vote again on the amendment to the ordinance.
I think we would need to first vote to...
Well, we already did, didn't we not?
We could vote to rescind our motion.
And to get into the politics of it a little bit here, this is where I start to see the concern, because I did see movement on the planning board to try to override the vote that the planning board took.
Right.
And
That's my concern.
And that's why I see developing the wording in that second question going to be difficult. So that, yes, Larry, this is allowing the planning board to revisit that in a way that doesn't remove it from the ballot, simply removes it from, it would simply allow the planning board to recommend or not recommend the amendment to the ordinance.
But you would definitely move forward with the amendment?
Yes.
Okay.
A follow-on to that is if the selectmen as a board submit these written amendments or adoption and amendment to the adoption in a complete form, would that be something that you all would feel comfortable either approving or not approving?
Well, I think that's what needs to be determined, and that's why I get the real reason why one of the biggest reasons why this is on the agenda to propose the joint meeting is because of the quorum issue. If 2 of us are at the planning board meeting next week with the intention of speaking to something on the agenda, then it really should be noticed as a joint meeting between the 2 boards. It would still be the planning board meeting. Scott would still be the chair of that meeting. It's just we would just be there because there would be 2 of us. So if we know ahead of time that there's going to be 2 of us there to speak towards something, then we have to notice it. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to. B?
I have a question. Years ago, these used to be planning on, because people do not go to meetings. They used to be on the town warrant, so there could be some discussion.
B, any zoning ordinance or any building code or any ordinance adopted by the town, it's been this way since as far back as you can look. This is, I'm not saying that the Jackson always did it the right way, but what I'm saying is that by the law requires that it be on the ballot, and the number 1 reason for that, and again, this is in that PowerPoint presentation presented by the LGC that we've talked about several times, In that, they explain that. And the number one reason for that is that on the warrant, when it's discussed at town meeting, that can be amended by the floor. And when you're adopting ordinance, building codes, and zoning ordinance and the like, that can invalidate the ordinance itself. And that's why it's important to have a ballot question that cannot be amended by the floor of the General Assembly.
An amendment could be made that would invalidate the ordinance.
Yes.
Well, I was just questioning because.
Yeah, and I understand.
That's a good question.
And it's a very good question because it's come up before. And the number two reason is to allow for a public hearing specifically on that question. And then when you're adopting building codes, when you're adopting zoning ordinance or other ordinances, the state feels as though the proposing body that's doing that has to hold a public hearing for that specific topic. And that those are the two main reasons for it. So, I mean, I guess I don't think we need to spin our tires too much more on this tonight. But Scott, I'll let you speak. But I mean, I plan on attending. John, you're going to be there. Bob, I don't know how important it is that you're there, but
extremely.
So I'm just going to propose, Scott, that we post a joint meeting between the boards for December 13th.
Does that make sense for the planning board?
I think so.
I mean, we've been talking about getting together for a work session, and it sounds like now we're ready.
Yeah, and I think that's where we're at. And I don't put this forth as like, this is what we're going to do. I'm really putting this forth as a solution to what I recognize as a problem that we're faced with at the moment.
And to answer your question, Jerry, I think my guess is that this will somewhat hang on that single-family residence solution option. That as I said, there are a number on the planning board that feel that option should be presented. There are also a number that feel that it shouldn't be presented. If what we end up talking about is the board of selectmen doing it this way, but without the exemption, then there'll be a lot more resistance on the planning board.
Hopefully, the joint meeting will work that out. I think with Bee's point, and I think it's an extremely valid one, the point is that a lot more people come to the town meeting as opposed to a hearing. I think it puts pressure on every one of you to make sure that public hearing gets the import of a town meeting, so that what Bee is talking about, people will know, and will have their input.
And
do we know when we have to have that public meeting by? There's a date.
Is it January 20th, Scott?
Excuse me?
Is January
Public
20th
hearing.
the date?
The first public hearing, if you anticipate the possibility of a second public hearing, is January, it's either 21st or 24th.
And you can have a second one after that?
You don't have to have a second one.
But you can.
If you change it from the first one to the second one, if you change it after the first hearing, then you have to have a second.
Change what, wording?
If you change the wording or...
Content.
Yeah.
In other words, if we were to have a public hearing after January 21st, and based on the hearing, the board
Input.
decided to make some change, we would not have time to have a second public hearing before the town meeting.
And if you made changes, you would have to have a second, you would have to have a
Yes.
public hearing, so then you couldn't basically, okay, got it.
I mean, you can change.
So we got to have a first public hearing before January 20th,
Right.
in order to do the quality work that we committed to.
In sort of planning this out, we have the regular planning board meeting next Thursday.
Yeah.
Which is when we would have this joint meeting. If there was work left to be done prior to the public hearing, at that point, we have two options. We can either hold a work session before the next regular planning board meeting, which is January.
Don't have a calendar.
Second Thursday in January. And then have a public hearing during that regular meeting in early January. Or we could finalize things at that regular meeting in January and then hold a second public hearing meeting prior to the 21st. So if we don't resolve things next week, then we will either have a work session or we'll have two meetings in January.
The meeting is 7 o'clock next Thursday, right? That's when you start.
And Scott, the only other item that I want to kind of plant the seed anyway for is fee structures for building permits. And as far as the second question, the amendment to something that we would adopt is concerned, I find myself personally kind of split on. I like the idea of offering the voters the option anyway. I can say that unequivocally. But I think if we could design a system that people weren't afraid of for single-family homes, and I think the biggest fear people have is the fees involved with building permits, where you're paying $1,000, $2,000 for your building permit fee. I think if we took a look at fees, and if we could discuss at the planning board meeting the idea of what fees we could look at, and obviously the fees are at the purview of the selectmen, but if you have the discussion at the planning board level and the board is in agreement, and that's what you talk about at the public hearing, that, for single-family homes, if we were to design a fee system, it would be different than it would be for multifamily home and commercial developments, where it could be capped out at something. Or if you look at the town of Madison, what they do, they have a base fee, and then it's at times 35 cents per square foot, I believe. And that if people were paying a lot less, that we could assure people, it's not going to be an onerous process for you to go through the state building code enforcement process for a single family home. It might just shed a different kind of light on how that second article might be voted on.
Excuse my ignorance, but currently, what is the fee structure?
You'd have to ask Andy or a rocket scientist.
The board's currently, and has for years, used the prescribed ICC permit form. It is a nationally recognized, internationally recognized scale. So, I mean, you already have a sliding scale, if you will, based on construction type and whether it's multifamily or commercial and type of commercial. So you already have that fee structure in place. You don't have to reinvent the wheel unless that really is your.
But how do you calculate the fees?
It's based on the International Code Council's. Every 6 months, they revise their fee structure based on construction costs.
But is it a flat fee for single-family residents? Is it a fee?
It's a graduated fee, and it's honestly, if big picture, if you were to grasp the concept here of what's going on, it's the most fair way to do it. It results in very high building permit fees, which is something that I've always, the biggest resistance you hear, that I hear anyway, towards enforcement is how much you pay for a building permit fee. And if you've looked at the way we've done it, it's designed to recover your administrative costs. And we do a pretty good job of pretty much doing that, I think. And that also demonstrates, I think, that it's the most fair way you can do it. But if that's the biggest resistance to people wanting something that could otherwise be a benefit to them, then I think that we could take a serious look at having something that's more based on a flat fee. And yes, the town would incur some administrative costs from that, but if you're building a new home, you're going to recover those costs pretty quickly. And I think from a political standpoint of selling this concept to the voters, that may be something that we would want to consider anyway as, and that's outside of what the ordinance adopted is.
But it comes into the discussion.
It comes into the discussion where it is.
The discussion. And so the fee structure that we're currently using.
So we take the value of the building, and there's a formula for that. And then you take that value and you multiply that by 0.0025.
And that's the assessment.
And that's the cost of the fee.
So it's fairly transparent to the property owners. They know.
Yes.
That's right under the application.
Yeah. And Scott, that's spelled out. That's the formula spelled out in the application itself. So, and that's all I wanted to add. Is that if you're willing to have that as part of the conversation under the guise that this is outside it, but it's.
And then how does that fee? How is that relative to what the town actually incurs for costs?
Right now, it's it's one of those things where you'd have to analyze over a 10-year period probably to really get a good grasp of it. In 2011, for instance, it was pretty much spot on. I mean, Diane put the numbers together for us, and it was pretty close. It was, I think 8,000. We had collected 11, but she didn't include necessarily all other some extemporaneous costs that have been involved. I mean, as far as, the site disturbance costs. We had some extraneous costs that weren't necessarily included entirely in that number. Well, the septic system designs I don't think were entirely included in that number. So when you iron everything out, at the end of the day, we were really close on where we need to be. And I think that demonstrates that the way we're doing it is fair. But if that's the hang up for people, like, I think we should at least consider doing something differently than that. And just as a point of topic, I think that's when I hear from people, this is the only reason I don't want to do this. And if we can remove that burden and say, you know what, well, we won't do that, then we'll just do this. I think that it may go a long ways towards getting more people on board with enforcement for everything anyway. But that said, I think we can move on from that now, and we'll plan on being at your meeting on December 13th, and we'll just be there, I think, as a reference. And John's obviously on the planning board meeting, but I don't want to think we're taking over your meeting or anything. We're just there to.
More than happy. More than welcome to meet the targets for that portion of the meeting at least.
Thank you for coming and sitting through it, Sarah. Thanks for coming. Andy, thanks for prolonging your stay.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Andy.
We're on item number 9.
Yes, we are.
Groundwater management permit application. We need much discussion on this.
No.
Going to entertain a motion to approve the groundwater management permit application.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's lots of things to sign here. Wow.
I put the yellow stickies are where you're supposed to sign.
Just me?
That's only a one signature document, didn't we?
Good.
Notice that last time we looked at it.
Yeah. Wow. Diane, I'll do this tomorrow morning. Are they all just me signatures, or I can do it at the end of the meeting too. I'll do it at the end of the meeting. Yeah. Are the signatures for John and Bob?
Just for you,
Okay.
well, just for the chair.
Okay.
Thanks, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
I'll put it in
Yes,
here.
sir. Computer server and town clerk tax collector computer replacement. I'd entertain a motion to purchase the computer server and town clerk tax collector computer replacement as proposed by Rob Costello.
Second. Want to make a motion, man?
Second.
Discussion here. Did anybody review? I reviewed this.
I looked at it.
The specs and everything seemed to be.
I think one of the questions I had was, did you ever find out what the life expectancy is? 5 years.
Ours is, we're on the sixth year on our server.
Mhm.
And then if we don't replace it this year, we're going on pushing 7.
And this is Jeanette's server.
No, this is Jeanette's desktop computer that's overdue for replacement, and
The server.
the server is the one that's in the town office here that the town clerk uses as well, doesn't she?
Well, the server runs all the computers.
Okay.
Just for your office and the town clerk's
Servers
office.
yes, for our office and for the town clerk. Not sure if it also runs the PDs.
It doesn't run the PD as far as I know.
I'm not sure. I thought it did, but.
I don't believe it does. They have their own programs that they use down there.
They do have their own computers, yes.
The only question I have towards the server is it more quiet? Do we know?
You know, that would be nice. I don't know. It's a business, it's a standard business type of model.
And I guess the only other thing I'd be concerned about, and this really doesn't have much to do with the purchase as much as just the logistics of this, and if it is noisy, I think we should consider trying to get it out of that room and maybe in the basement,
downstairs,
if it's possible to get it in the basement. So if you could just ask Rob that.
Okay, I'll talk to him about it and I'll put it forward.
I don't have to work there all day long, so
It's
I
very,
mean, but
it is very draining.
That's total cost.
that's for the
Fans and everything.
town clerk's computer.
And then the server is 37.
No, well,
No.
installed. It's
Okay.
the 42, well, no, 47 and change.
40,
No, it's about $5,000.
5,829, so it's gone up. No, that's for the total between the two, 5,829.
5,000.
For the computer and the server?
Yeah, the
58.
labor to install.
And Jeanette's computer.
850 labor. Okay.
49 includes the computer and the server.
Okay.
Total price are both, okay, and then the 850 is the installation.
Yes.
Okay. And that's in the, we have that in the budget.
So far as I know, we do, and you indicated that we do have that in the budget at this point in time.
No, we don't. We don't, I looked at our budget line, and there's, I have to pay $1,700 to Avatar for the tax map, so it's not going to be this much.
But from the capital reserve, yeah,
There's 10,000 in there.
that's where the money for this would come from, I'm assuming.
That's what I would recommend.
Yeah. So we have the money there for it.
Yes, I thought you meant out of the budget.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, no, we'd have it in the budget, like,
And
line
I would
item.
also,
Big picture with it.
I would also recommend the board entertain making a motion to authorize withdrawing from the expendable trust, the capital reserve
Yep.
trust fund.
Yeah.
To do this.
We made a motion in a second. Let's withdraw that one, if we can.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion.
Draw the second.
Are we at consensus to go ahead and do this?
Yeah.
I'd entertain a motion to purchase the computer and server as presented by Rob Casella, and to expend those funds from the capital reserve fund set up to purchase office equipment.
Office equipment, capital reserve.
Yeah, it's office equipment
expendable
account.
trust fund.
Is it expendable trust fund?
Yes.
The office equipment expendable trust fund.
Okay. So
Move.
Second.
I have a copy of the trust fund language at the last page.
Oh, right, yeah, this is voted in 2002, voted to create an expendable trust fund under the provision of RSA 3119 to be known as the Town Office Equipment Fund for the purpose of purchasing, repairing, or maintenance of office equipment, and to raise and appropriate the sum of $2,000. Oh, that was the year they raised $2,000 worth, but that's the purpose of the fund.
Purpose of the fund, yeah.
Pretty good to me, so.
All right.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Health insurance renewal. Have we taken a look at this? We're looking at, if we continue with the same program that we have today, I mean, I'm assuming we're not looking at a different company, but if we continue with the same benefits package that we have, we're looking at a 7.3% increase. I read that correctly, Diane? I didn't make that clear, I'm sorry, kind of just drifted there.
You know that there's, yes, I put on the increases 8.7% on one plan and 6.7 on the other.
But those are the individual plans. What I'm talking about is the total that we're looking at for an increase is $13,038.52
That's the annual.
for the annual, and that represents a 7.3% change, or is that under a different?
I didn't
Yeah.
do the percentage. It
Gotcha.
would probably be the difference between 6.7 and 8.7.
Right, but if I look at the second page you have here, you've got current benefit renewal.
From the LGC.
From the LGC, the monthly total, it goes up approximately $2,000 a month, a little under $2,000 a month, and they're saying it's a 7.3% increase. Numbers there, 13,000, so I mean, yeah, John, you want to do the math on that, you can, but that looks to be about 7 point, yeah. So that's what we're looking at if we stick with the current plan. They did offer us in here as well to look at some different benefits options to look at anyway, as far as I believe it's mostly prescription coverage that we don't currently have is the other thing that being proposed, but we're not looking at a proposal for something different than what we currently have anyway. And it's, I remember that this time last year, sitting down thinking that, well, last year's increase was only $3,000 from the previous year. This year, we're looking at a $13,000 increase. And each year, you're going to go up exponentially as your numbers get bigger. And these could indefinitely go up. At this point in time, I don't think I'm prepared to look at a different plan anyway. I'm content to go with the plan that we currently have.
The other point I'd like to make is we received a $7,600 credit on the health insurance. They gave back that money to the town.
What was the credit for?
They redone their risk pool. They lowered their retainage.
Right.
And I sent out that information in an email a couple of weeks or so ago. It had something to do with the lawsuit. They were retaining much too much money, and they retained so much money to cover all the payouts.
Their reserve fund
Yeah.
was above what was acceptable standard for the state, so they had to return to their customers the overage, and that's what the $7,600 represents.
That helps a little bit.
Yeah, that doesn't really get applied against it anyway when you're looking at what our increases are. And what I was going to say above and beyond that was that, last year, never got the chance to, but I said I would look into other possible programs we could be looking at. And I think that next year that would be a smart thing to do anyway, is just to review at some point in time other options, so that when we get to this point next year, we can at least take a look at it and say, this is what we're currently doing, this is what the increase looks like. If we went with option A, B, or C, these are the kind of differences that we'd be looking at.
And did we just find out between the last meeting and now that this was going to be a 7.3% increase?
We did not. I think that Diane,
we've known this for a while.
You first kind
As
of.
soon as I got these, I sent them by email so you can get a heads up that.
But I remember Diane back in August or maybe even before, then you did give me the heads up that we'd be looking at some sort of increase this year. I remember you doing that anyway. And so it wasn't just, this didn't just get thrown before us like this anyway. It's been out there before. And, I know I haven't had the time to look at anything different anyway in the interim, so, yeah.
Okay. Well, that should, I mean, if we act on, if we get another 7% increase or something hovering around 10% next year, and we know about it in August, we'll have time to really shop, I guess is why I asked that question.
And you also have the Obamacare that's going to be taking effect, and that could also, there's a lot of things that are up to the year with how this is all going to play out.
That's the nice thing about being involved with the risk pool, is that a risk pool is outside some of the major impacts of that type of thing. So that's helpful anyway. But there's going to be a number of concerns that we're looking at for healthcare, and we'll continue to look at anyway. But the other thing, I think that if we're going to be considering, a change in our healthcare coverage, we need to have that discussion with our employees, department heads as well before. It's not the kind of thing you would just throw on at the end of the year. Oh, by the way, we're changing your plan.
Well, and there'll be a number of options, and you would typically want to have a presentation by an insurance representative explaining what the options were.
So the smart thing would be sometime
it's a process.
Next spring or early next summer, be looking at doing something like that.
It's a process.
And the LGC is more than happy to facilitate that type of thing for us, but it's just.
Okay.
So, I mean, I guess I'd entertain a motion to approve
so moved.
The 2013 health insurance renewal. Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, if that's the case, if you could sign.
Oops, I'm signing under the title there, aren't I?
I can't read upside down.
Apparently, I can't read right side up. Do I
You
sign
need to sign
sign
right
here?
here, the
This
employer.
is my title.
Yeah, you sign here, and I'll do your title. I'll take care of the title.
Okay, I initialed my title for some reason, I suppose. For local government center, just that one spot.
Yeah.
Entertain a motion to approve the timber tax levy, intent to cut 12-23103.
So moved.
Second?
Discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Entertain a motion to approve the intent to cut number 12, 23109.
Moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Oops, I didn't give them to anybody else.
It's all right, I got you covered.
Thank you.
Six, 2012. 16.
Oh, there's two?
Yeah, that's two spots.
The MS5 form,
If you want to table that to next meeting, we have time. Basically, it's just to engage in, with them to complete the MS5.
And-
Last year, we spent $2,900. This year, they gave me a price, which they sent me an email, there's a copy of it, of $2,800 to complete.
I'm prepared to go ahead and approve it tonight. I don't mind postponing it for next meeting as well, depending, at the pleasure of the board. Last year, Diane, you had done quite a bit of work vetting different providers, and, we could go through the same process again. I just don't see the benefit to that, because this and another local group was pretty much the lowest numbers we were looking at. And they were a little bit lower, and that's kind of why we had chosen to go with them, so they did.
They did a very good job, they're very quick, I liked them, and it didn't drag out like it tends to.
So you're happy with recommending?
I would
them
recommend
as well?
it, yes. I would recommend
I
them.
mean,
They're local.
Any reason why we don't want to approve this tonight?
No.
Entertain a motion to approve the engagement letter for completing the 2012 MS5 form with Leon, McDonald, and Roberts.
So moved.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. And this is just
Yeah.
my signature, I guess. And those two signatures are completely different. It brings us to item number 14. Sue Seavey is requesting a refund for the interest paid on property taxes. Are we all aware of the situation here?
I don't remember exactly what that was about, but I do recall seeing it. This was a wrong address one, that's right, I remember that one, yeah.
This is the one where the tax bill was sent to the address on the deed. The deed had recently been redone, and the incorrect address was put on the deed by the person's attorney that facilitated the deed transfer. Really, so there was nothing the town could do. It was a situation where we sent it to the address that we had, and therefore the person's taxes were late. There was no intent to not pay the taxes, but at the same time, that's the onus of the property owner to make sure that the address is correct. So,
Did Jeanette address that with us?
I talked with Jeanette about it. Jeanette talked to Diane about it, and I kind of informed Jeanette that we pretty much established the policy in regards to this twice already this year, and this is really just another. Jeanette's not recommending that we not approve the. I guess to the extent that she can, really, she's asking that we not grant the requests anyway. Yeah.
And what is the amount of the interest?
$102, something like that.
Onus is on the property owner. Sets a precedence if we do.
It does, and I think that we've pretty consistently done, not deviated from the letter of what the law is. And,
right.
It's, the law states clearly that it's the onus of the property owner to have the proper billing address on the deed. That's what we go by. It was their fault that the incorrect address was there. It's,
right.
It's a shame there was no intent not to pay the taxes, and I do sympathize, but I think for us to have a consistent process that we follow,
right.
It's pretty clear that we just wouldn't do so. I guess I'd entertain a motion to deny the request for the refund of the interest paid on property taxes for Sioux CV.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Diane, when that happens, are we supposed to send a letter back? Does Jeanette do that?
Well, since it's in the purview of the selectmen to deny or approve a refund, to me, it would seem reasonable that a letter would come to the selectmen's office.
I would think so. So should we send a letter back stating that we denied the request for refund?
Yeah, I've done it in the past.
Okay. Thank you. And we can sign that
And I'll,
when it's ready.
the checks.
Thank you. George Howard, refund request for building permit fees, map R19 lot 10. I'm going to go ahead and read this letter from George for the record anyway. Town of Jackson, Board of Selectmen. Gentlemen, on August 18th, 2011, I submitted a building permit application for the construction of my garage. The application included 2 checks to the Town of Jackson, check number 482 for $75, which was non-refundable, and check 483 for $95. As I understand, check 483 was assessed for inspection fees. The building was completed with the final payment to the contractor on December 15th, 2011. The inspector was present and observed the footings being poured. No comments were provided at that time. It has been nearly a year since the completion of the project. Several attempts have been made by me, ranging from face-to-face meetings to email communications to phone calls, in an attempt to complete the final inspection. Regrettably, the final inspection has not been completed, with the last scheduled being canceled by the inspector. I am confident the building has been constructed in accordance with applicable codes. This is reinforced by the fact that I have experienced no malfunctions with any of the equipment or failure of any building component. Hence, I see no further need for any remaining inspections by the town inspector. I accept full responsibility for compliance with the applicable codes. In view of the above, I request an accounting of the inspection fees and any remaining balance, if any, be returned to me. The fee paid in 2011 was $95. Is that the total of the fee paid? Between the $75 fee and the additional value?
It's just the value fee.
20.
He's asking for refund.
So for $95 was the total of the value fee. So there was a $75 fee paid plus a $95 fee paid. I guess I'd look at this and I'd have to probably contest the first paragraph a little bit. And it says, as I understand, check 483 was assessed for inspection fees. That's the purpose of, I guess that's, the reasoning behind the fee, but the fee is assessed by the value of the building, not necessarily directly in connection with the inspection fee. So, I guess, I'm looking at this from the idea of the inspection fee process, and I'm not inclined to be considering granting a refund for the fee paid. There is, I think, another issue going on in this letter that I see anyway, which again is more to do with a resident trying to understand our building permit process and being confused on how to have finality on that process. And I think this is just another example again where we're not providing a very transparent process, and it's just another reason that we should be going through the motions that we are anyway.
Well, it seems like he had some clear expectations on what was going to be happening up there for an inspection process, and in his mind that didn't happen, and that's why he's looking for a return on money. Is that what I'm? That letter came around to us a couple weeks ago.
Did Andy have any say in that?
I did CC him on it, and I did put in my email, please, Andy, let us know what your take is on.
I had noted on here that I wanted to move him up when Andy's still here, and I forgot to ask.
Well, that's what I was
do you want to?
I'd like to have him weigh in on it.
Yeah, I'd like to have him weigh in on it.
Should we just, there's nothing to table, but yeah, to table this until the next meeting.
Yeah.
And have it up under building matters?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good enough?
All right, second page.
Back to public comment. Does anyone have anything
Actually,
at this time?
I've got a question. On that last item, does a garage require an occupancy permit?
Didn't ask for
What?
it. Didn't ask for an occupancy permit. It didn't ask for an occupancy.
Does it require one?
It's a single family home, as I read it.
Oh, okay.
As I read it, would not require.
Say it doesn't.
No.
That's all.
Under a state building code enforcement process, then yes, a certificate of occupancy would be required for a garage. And that's more certificate of use than it is necessarily for the occupancy part of it, because obviously you don't occupy a garage from a living standpoint, but as far as it's a certificate of use and occupancy. So it would be, in order for you to use your garage as intended, you would have to get a certificate that would verify completion and the applicable inspection process. So. Any other comments?
I'll email the three of you rather than taking up time now. I have some concerns, but I'll email you.
Thank you.
You'll get the email before dinner.
It's already gone.
Board member issues, any at this point in time?
I just did want to mention that I did get a call from a resident concerning the issue we talked about as far as the stop sign on Wilson Road. And the history that that person gave me was that stop sign was put there by the state.
Yeah, that's what I kind of figured.
And
State road.
so, just because it came up before and I did get some feedback on that, I wanted to pass that along.
Thanks.
Cool.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Under new business, I have a right to know law non-public session checklist form. And regarding all the concerns that we've been receiving in how we handle non-public sessions and how we go into them, whether we seal the minutes or not. In discussions I've had with the LGC, they recommend that you use a form that you would implement when you go into non-public session. You would use a form to make sure that you're doing so for the right reasons.
Check off the RSA that applies to
Check off the RSAs, and I believe we've been pretty much following this format, and Martha, I think, has done a really good job of kind of making sure that we do that to an extent that we are, and this is just kind of a formal way of that we would reference every time we go into non-public, to just as a reference, and then we're making sure that we're checking everything off properly and that we're going in for the proper reasons, and it's just a way of making sure that we don't let things slip through the cracks as far as we're doing everything in a proper way.
So you take that form and it's a checklist, you check off the appropriate RSA and you'd attach it to the minutes? Or
yes, this form would be attached to the minutes unless you seal it, and then it would be part of the sealed record. It's basically the minutes we'd be taking in non-public session.
Well, I was almost wondering if that checklist wouldn't be attached to the public minutes that talk about going into a non-public session. There's nothing on those that would be non-public information, would it?
You could do both.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that, do both.
Yeah, you could do both.
Okay.
And again, I think you're right, Bob, because this is like description of matters discussed and final decisions made. So you would be able to describe what the topic was anyway. or what you could describe in the topic there, and this is really just more of a reference that we would use to
Yeah.
make sure that we're following the proper
I like
procedures.
that, having a document like that, it's a template.
And we can maybe talk about this a little bit more at the next meeting if we want to, but I just kind of wanted to throw it out there for
Yeah.
initial idea anyway. We can
Thanks
move on.
for coming up with that.
We can move on from
They
there.
got everything, don't they?
They do.
24/7, remember?
No. Old business, I think that what we just kind of talked about would be something that we would adopt as board policy, actually. Job descriptions, I don't think we're going to get anywhere tonight, but unless
We need another work session, though.
we do need another work session, so should we schedule one?
Yeah. And it won't happen next week. Well,
I'm just getting concerned, and not that that's not important, I'm just getting concerned with the budget process. I'm feeling that the board is getting really crowded with taking up their times with other matters with the, state building codes and
Budget's coming down the
just
pipe.
take into consideration, we even haven't started the budget process yet.
I really think that that's a really good point, and it's not something that I want to keep putting off, which is, again, I guess we could look at it two ways. That's why we need a separate session.
If you want, I could do the job description like Bob wanted it, now that I know it's clear how he wants it to be all uniform, and not so much specific in the, duty part. I could give it a shot and
Well,
look at it.
I don't think we need to do that. I think we're pretty close with it.
Well, we
anyway.
are.
And that's why I think if we have one session, we can kind of just nail it down and call it good.
yeah, because the chief's fine with his, and even if we got together for 30 minutes before the planning board meeting to go over the big, what was it, the three primary ones was the management position.
I think we have them pretty well all
We do.
nailed down. It's just a matter of
Formatting.
If we had that session,
Yep.
we could
I'm good with that. You guys
vote
want
to
to meet
approve
before?
that.
In the line.
6:30?
Yep.
Okay,
And we weren't planning a meeting for any of those other reasons anyway before then, so it's.
That's right.
I think that it's.
So
I won't interfere with that.
13th, you want to meet at 6:30?
that's right. We'll
Okay,
have-
I'll put out a notice.
Yeah, work session at 6:30.
Cool.
Thank you.
The issue that we're running into with unsealing the minutes regarding the Lewis litigation, I spoke with the LGC about that as well when I talked to them about the non-public session. And first off, they said that it was, we were doing it exactly correct, that we are obligated to review the minutes before we unseal them to make sure. Most of the biggest reason is that to make sure that the reputation of people involved in the minutes are protected, and then that's what we want to verify. They did recommend as a solution to the logistical problem that we're having is that we do have the ability to authorize each other to review the minutes separately outside of the meeting, individually.
We can review them separately
Yeah,
outside of the meeting.
if we make a motion to do so.
Okay.
So I guess I'm going to entertain a motion to authorize the Board of Selectmen to individually review the non-public session, sealed non-public session minutes involving the Lewis litigation. And so we can do it at our leisure.
Logistically, that would be easier than trying to find a way to come together and review them as a group. How do you feel about it, John?
That sounds great to me.
I think it would be a way to kind of get the process done, because I don't think it's going to take a lot of time to review the minutes and confirm that we can unseal them. But if we have to do it in a non-public session, like Diane said, we got a lot going on between now and March, so it's not going to happen. So again, I guess I would entertain a motion to do so.
So who would take up the coordination effort of getting those copies out, or?
I don't think we want to get copies out. I think that we'd have to come here and.
Come here, there'll be a packet. Okay.
If Diane, if you can somehow.
I'll collect all the envelopes
And
how we were doing in the past, stapling it, and then you'll have to, open up the envelope.
well, I think that's what we'd have to do is we'd have to unseal the envelopes and just put them in a
First
file.
person, whichever one of you does it first will end up.
And I'm assuming that a lot of, or not a lot, but there are non-public session minutes as well that preceded when we started to seal them in the envelope. So we'd have to find those as well, get them in a folder.
They're all together.
Are they? Yeah.
Okay.
that we
Are you
can,
going to reseal them? Are you each going to reseal them?
well, I think that we're gonna, no, I don't think so. I don't think we need to do that. I think we just need to open them up, review them, and as we each review them, maybe just sign it.
Back in the envelope?
Yeah, and sign, initial
Check off, yeah, you've done it.
that we reviewed it.
All right.
And,
And we're looking for things that wouldn't be appropriate to make public,
yep.
to release to the public.
And the primary context of that is damaging to somebody's reputation, other than our own.
Got it. All right.
You are allowed to take notes from that review, from the minutes.
Uh-huh.
So you are allowed to write
Okay.
down your notes from that.
All right.
That's entirely appropriate. You're just not allowed to make copies and remove them from the premises.
Do we need to make a motion to do that way, or?
Yes.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
we need a motion to be able to review them. I'm just
Oh,
talking,
okay.
I'm just talking about the guidelines for doing it,
Yeah,
so.
okay. I'll make a motion that we review the non-public minutes from the Holly Lewis litigation that's been ongoing, and
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
all right.
Aye.
You just need to name each of you, as the motion had to say each selectman could do it.
I've got that.
Yeah.
The motion to authorize the Board of
Yes.
Selectmen to individually review the
Individually?
non-public minutes from
Okay.
Holly
Yeah.
Lewis litigation.
Thank you. You saved me. Thank you.
Shaw and Sue Chase water drainage matter. I spoke with Brian Shaw about what we had talked about at the last meeting, and he concurs in his agreement that the best way to facilitate it is for him to directly pay Susan Chase, and he's happy to do so, but he would like to see some type of document from the town where the town accepts the responsibility for the town culvert before that exchange were to take place. So I guess I'd be looking for some input there. I did craft a document that I hadn't brought with me this evening. I don't know why. Maybe the next meeting I could bring the document.
Maybe because you knew we'd be 3 hours in by the time.
We just do that next meeting?
Would it be prudent to have our town attorney review?
I believe
the letter?
so, and that's why I don't know whether we want to do that between now and the next meeting,
Yeah.
or...
Yeah, I think, take what you've got and have Peter go through it and give us some feedback on it.
Okay, good enough. Storage bins. Diane, I guess I'm going to ask if you could look in our budget and see what we've got as far as $10,000 for storage bins.
We need storage.
You're talking about like the transfer station budget?
It's a transfer station budget, yeah. I know we've got the money that we appropriate for the, it's kind of technically for the joint account, but we never spend it into there unless it's required, which it hasn't been. The $7,000 that we approved in the budget, I think it's in the general fund, the general operating budget, that we approved for the transfer station.
I thought this was about the storage bins.
Oh, that's what I thought.
Storage bins
This is for the
Within setbacks?
yes.
Oh,
That's what I thought it was too.
It was, I guess, I'm not sure why it's on old business.
We had talked about it last time, that's
I
why.
didn't know if it was resolved.
I don't think there's anything to resolve.
Okay. I put it on there and I asked you for
Oh,
one
okay,
of the
yeah.
year, but you never really
I think we can take it off. We had a discussion and no action was taken, so.
I think we can remove it
If you
from.
want to just scratch it off.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not doesn't need to be a carryover.
So back to the topic I thought it was about. I don't know how I got storage bin into trash compactor bin, but they're both metal bins. So, I guess that's what my thinking was. At the last meeting, I think I brought it up.
You did.
We need a new compactor bin.
Right.
It's going to cost $9,000 and change. It's going to continue to go up. We can try to scratch out of our budget somewhere this year for it, or we can just put it on the warrant article. I know we appropriate $7,000, I think, every year, and so it would just be a matter of finding another $2,000. And if it can't be found anywhere else, I'm sure we could probably find it from the salaries and wages for the transfer station
From this year's budget.
from this year's budget. We would just have to facilitate that by making a motion to transfer from one item to the other. So long
And
as
we'd
it's
have to do that
unencumbered.
at our next meeting.
We'd want to do that at our next meeting, yeah. If we wanted to. I mean, it's the one we have is still working. It's just, it needs to be replaced soon. And
Right.
the longer we take, the more money it's going to cost.
If we can locate that money in this year's budget, it seems like it would be, make sense to get it out of the way this year. But I could stand to be corrected on that by either one of you if I'm missing something.
So you want to transfer an amount of money from one line to another in the transfer station budget?
We want to find 10 grand. Yeah.
And get a report next meeting about whether we found it and where it came from, and if we have it.
If you want, Diane, I'll take a quick look myself before. I know you've got a lot on your plate, so I'm
Does it
thinking
make
that,
sense to do it this year, if we can?
I think it does. It's just a matter of, it does need to happen, it needs to happen soon.
I
and
think that we have some money there from the building of town maintenance. There's some money left over.
Yeah, there is. I can't imagine there's much.
But you're thinking there's money in the transfer.
Portion of it.
But
Station salary line item?
not so, well, yeah, but there's also the line item that we raise every year for transfer station equipment.
Okay.
Repair and maintenance of transfer station equipment.
Well, we can. We can capital reserve account?
Is it a capital reserve account? I thought the money was appropriated for the joint account, and we just never put it in the joint account because we don't need to. It's only there for backup. Bartlett, for instance, never appropriated any money for that same item.
Every year we put money into this expendable fund. It's an expendable trust fund.
Well, that we do, but we also put money, I thought, into a different fund, and I don't even know, I can't find the 2012. Well, I can look into it and see.
There's another meeting this month, right?
Yeah. Oh, town warrant and budget, that's why. Nope, I missed it. How did I miss it?
It's on page 79. Transfer site building and recycling equipment expendable trust fund.
No, it's not the expendable trust fund. I know that we didn't put money in that last year, did we?
Yes, we did, 4,900,
4,900?
page 79. Article 19.
Yeah. Site buildings and recycling equipment expendable trust fund. I don't think we'd be able to spend for that for a compactor bin. I'd have to read when that was adopted to confirm that, but I read transfer site buildings and recyclable equipment expendable trust fund. It's not a building, and it's not recycling equipment.
No? Okay.
I mean, technically, I think we could get into a little bit of trouble there. But I thought that we appropriated $7,000 pretty much every year for the joint account for maintenance.
That would be in the regular budget, maybe that's what you're...
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for, and for some
Okay,
reason. I can't find the line item.
You guys still looking for money?
Yeah, which I can do outside the
The
meeting.
joint
So
account is $4,000.
that's how much we appropriated.
Yeah. And then we've got 3,000 in operating expenses, which brings it up to 7.
Yeah, that's where I think I'm getting the 7. So I think we can target that, and then we could probably also target the salaries item, because we obviously haven't come
Or
on.
maybe we can do 3,000 for building, maintenance of town building. Like,
We could, but I guess yeah, wherever you think we can find 10 grand, we'll be looking at and consider that at the next meeting. Would be good. Vacation policy, was that on here for any particular reason? Do we need to?
I just didn't know if anything, I didn't get the sense anything was resolved. I'm not sure if you wanted to change something or... the way I was doing it.
Resolution was a day is a day.
A day
No
is
longer
a day
tracking
versus
by hours.
hours.
Right.
So that was resolved?
Yes,
Okay.
that was the resolution.
I don't know how
Alright.
I'm going to compute that. I'm having concerns about how I'm going to compute.
I mean, I thought there was a lot of unfairness there. Somebody works 4 10-hour days and they get a day off. They're getting 10 hours off.
No, it's not. Again, it's a vacation week. If you take a week's vacation, you're entitled to your same week's pay, whether you work 4 10-hour days or 5 8-hour days. It's the amount you get in the end is going to be the same if you compute it by the day, whether you work a 10-hour day or an 8-hour day.
What are we talking about?
Well,
What was our example?
But the bottom line is the vacation policy says that it's a day, and it's reconfirmed by the fact that it says if you work a 4-day work week, a vacation week is 4 days. Nowhere in the policy does it say that a person 15 vacation days is equivalent to 120 hours. It doesn't say that anywhere in the policy. If we want it to be that, then we need to change our policy.
well, I guess I'm not quite sure how I'm going to compute, where it says in the policy, where it says in the policy that if somebody works so many hours,
But again, I thought we cleared this up at the last meeting.
We were talking about it. We came up with an issue. That's why.
there's more to it than just, it's not that simple.
I can't remember the example we came up with. It was a very solid example
Well,
where
to
that
me,
would
it's
screw up.
To me, it's pretty simple. You get 15 vacation days, you can take 15 days vacation. The rate of pay that you get for that day is going to be the same regardless of how long a day you work. So
There are multiple concerns that I have. One is, you've got some employees who enjoy taking a few hours of vacation rather than a full 8 hours or a full 10 hours.
But that goes against the intention of the policy, which is, again, it's stated in the policy is to rest and relax. And how are you resting and relaxing? You're coming in for 2 hours, and that's flex hours. And if we want flex hours, we can discuss that. But our current policy doesn't have flex hours in it. And
Well, it says that in the context that if people don't use their vacation pay, the town won't pay them in lieu of taking it. And that's when it says that, you have a vacation to take, not that you can't take it in 2 hours or 10 hours or 8-hour increments. I mean,
This issue was resolved at our meeting, as I recall, so if we want to reopen it and have more discussion around it, because there's been thought since we resolved it that warrants reopening it again, I'm all in favor of that. I'd like to see it as a separate standalone issue at the next meeting, though, than trying to open this up tonight.
I agree.
I'm not sure we're going to have time for that at the next meeting, but it should be a separate agenda item for sure.
If we get to it at the next meeting and we really feel like we're so far behind we can't address it, that's fine. But, with all due respect, if there was something that hadn't been well thought out, then let's look at it again. Sure.
because there is another, after someone's been here for, I can't recall, it's 7 years or so, they get 3 days. So does that mean that, somebody who's working a 10
That's what
hour
it
day
was.
gets 30 days and somebody who works
30
an
hours.
8-hour day gets 24 hours?
Yeah.
There's inequity and I'm not quite sure how to compute that.
So let's go
We'll
ahead.
bring that up later.
Okay, just- let's just-
That's what it was. Yeah, it was because they added 3 days to it, and it wasn't a week.
Yeah, it's not divisible by 10.
Right. Anyways, we'll look at that again.
We received a thank you letter, or this is a thank you letter for the Garden Club. This is Dear Jerry Beck, President of the Mountain Garden Club. Please extend a huge thank to the Mountain Garden Club members for the lovely holiday wreaths, which now hang on Jackson's town buildings. The Board of Selectmen, on behalf of the townspeople, want to be sure you realize how much we appreciate your generous, thoughtful gifts. The wreaths of the town office building, fire garage, and library create a very festive appearance. Thank you. It's a very nice letter. Thanks for putting it together. I think it's something we should do.
Yeah, I agree. Happy to sign that.
Also, a big thanks to Wentworth and the Chamber of Commerce for yesterday's dinner, too. It was excellent.
Great time was had. Nice Nice get together.
Yeah, it was. Wish I got there earlier.
I took care of the appetizers for you.
Yeah, thanks. I didn't get any, but I had enough food, that's for sure.
The elderly exemption, Diane, is it a pretty simple, just
Yes,
technical thing?
it's just a
Pretty
matter
quick.
of signing that application because it was originally denied and we need to approve it.
I don't see any reason why we need to go to non-public to do that. This is the one we approved, we just need to
Yes.
sign it.
And then the abatement form as well.
We've already
So
approved
that-
it, so I don't think we need to go discuss anything, it's just.
No.
Okay, all right.
Cool.
We just only three need to sign it.
Sign away.
Thanks for
Thank you.
getting that together.
Got a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I got a motion. To adjourn. Goodness.
Good second on that? I
Second.
that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Shut her down, Hank.
I like that. We should close every meeting now.
Shut her down.
Shut her down.
You didn't estimate very well, that's all right.
I know. I told you I might have been a little overreacted.
You have to go.
Can I do it tomorrow morning? Will it make any difference?
I'll put it on the Warren's desk.